Honorable Speaker, I think you need to make a ruling whether these two honorable members are properly dressed. They can enjoy regalia from their traditions, but is it parliamentary, especially in the National Assembly? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Tonkei, what are you celebrating today?
Honorable Speaker, next week, Daro County, Samburu County, Laikipia, plus Kajiado County, and Ile Chams from Baringo County will be celebrating the Culture Week, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to request, Honorable Speaker, that when we see us dressed this way, in fact, I'm even requesting this House and Kenya to adopt this kind of dress code as the Kenyan dress code. Mheshimiwa Speaker, I am here to celebrate the Kabasai culture. Thank you. African.
Honorable Tonkei and Agnes, I'm not satisfied that you are properly dressed, but I will give you a reprieve. I have just sent away quietly a member who came here dressed in an appropriate manner to go and dress up. We don't want to name and shame any member, but certainly if we allow that kind of direction, tomorrow Kamketi will turn up dressed in skins of colobus monkeys. Others will dress in something different. And you remember I sent away Kagombe when he faked to be Mgorino. So we will give you a reprieve now, but just know that you are inappropriately dressed, and that kind of dressing will not be allowed here. Yes, Julius Sunguli. Is it because the two ladies are Maasai?
Mr. Speaker, you and I went around the Commonwealth and drafted the standing orders.
Yes.
But I know that you are more knowledgeable because you have been practicing them more. And I would plead, just for clarity, Mr. Speaker, that you make it very clear what the dressing code for women is. Because to the best of my understanding, and just look at it, look at the way Honorable Rebecca Tonkei is dressed. It makes her more beautiful. And the texture of her dress is very good. You know, it's made of cotton, and it's just that she has wore more beads than before. Mr. Speaker, can you just elaborate to me
Honorable Sunguli,
what exactly is wrong with it?
Dressing is not supposed to elicit amorous considerations. You're out of order. Yes. Next. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Yes, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, before I give notice, you quickly dismissed that point of order by the Honorable Sunkuli. And I was going to object, Honorable Speaker, to that point of order on the basis that he has used the word more. He said that the Honorable Tonkei looks more beautiful in that dress. And I was going to protest because ordinarily the Honorable Tonkei is a very beautiful lady with a dress and even in another dress.
Honorable Majority Leader.
I know there are members who expected me to say other things. I said in that dress and even in another dress. I know what Honorable Kakombe expected me to say.
You may be required to give further and better particulars, but go on.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I therefore beg to give notice to the following motion, Honorable Speaker, that aware that Article 1.1 of the Constitution provides that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with the Constitution. Further, aware that Article 1.2 of the Constitution provides that the people of Kenya may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. Conscious that Article 10 of the Constitution espouses the national values and principles of governance, which include the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people. Further conscious that Article 94 of the Constitution provides that Parliament manifests the diversity of the nation, represents the will of the people, and exercises its sovereignty, recognizing that there is need to embrace consultation, dialogue, and consensus building as a way of resolving issues of concern to the people of Kenya. Cognizant that despite the constitutional and legal reforms on the electoral processes and the electoral laws, after every election cycle, there has been mistrust of electoral outcomes, leaving the country divided. Further cognizant that efforts to enhance constitutionalism, the rule of law, and respect for human rights need to be promoted, aware that there have been previous calls and attempts at building consensus on issues of concern to the people of Kenya through bipartisan engagement in Parliament, appreciating the need to establish an inclusive forum for dialogue, consultation, and consensus building in seeking to promote the peace, stability, and prosperity of the country, and acknowledging that the majority party in Parliament and the minority party in Parliament have agreed to embrace dialogue through the establishment of a National Dialogue Committee to recommend a way forward on issues of concern to the people of Kenya. Now, therefore, the Houses of Parliament resolve as follows. One, that the two Houses of Parliament establish a National Dialogue Committee consisting of 10 members to represent the Kenya Kwanza Alliance Party, Kenya Kwanza, a coalition constituting the majority party of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya, and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party, Azimio, a coalition forming the minority party of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. Two, that each coalition shall appoint 5 members to the National Dialogue Committee. 3, that the membership of the National Dialogue Committee shall be drawn from Parliament and outside Parliament. 4, that the National Dialogue Committee shall comprise the following members to represent Kenya Kwanza. 1, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, Delegation Leader. 2, Governor Cecily Mbarire, Deputy Delegation Leader. 3, the Honorable Senator Aaron Cheruyot. 4, the Honorable Omar Hassan Omar. And 5, the Honorable Catherine Wambilianga. 5, that the National Dialogue Committee shall comprise the following members to represent Azimio. 1, His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, Delegation Leader. 2, the Honorable Opiyo Wandayi, Deputy Delegation Leader. 3, the Honorable Amina Mnyazi. 4, the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. And 5, the Honorable Senator Okongo Omogeni. 6, that the mandate of the National Dialogue Committee shall be to facilitate dialogue and consensus building and recommend appropriate constitutional, legal, and policy reforms on issues of concern to the people of Kenya to be framed by the National Dialogue Committee in line with the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Kenya and respecting the functional and institutional integrity of state organs. Therefore, the Houses of Parliament approve that the technical teams representing Kenya Kwanza and Azimio shall support the National Dialogue Committee, that the technical team representing Kenya Kwanza shall comprise the following persons. 1, Dr. Mudhomi Dhiankolu. 2, Dr. Linda Musumba. 3, Dr. Duncan Ojwang, and Nick Biketi. 9, that the technical team representing Azimio shall comprise the following persons. Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, Professor Adam Zolo, Abubakar Zain Abubakar, and Lynn Ngugi. 10, that further the National Dialogue Committee shall be assisted by 2 officers designated as communication secretaries, one of whom shall be appointed by the leader of the majority party, and the other appointed by the leader of the minority party. The Houses of Parliament further resolve 11, that the National Dialogue Committee shall formulate and adopt a framework agreement to guide the bipartisan talks. 12, that the National Dialogue Committee shall report to the leadership of Kenya Kwanza and Azimio coalitions within 60 days, and after that submit its report to Parliament. 13, that in the execution of its mandate, the National Dialogue Committee may invite, engage with, and consider submissions from stakeholders, collect views from the public, and engage experts, professionals, and other technical resource persons as necessary. 14, that the National Dialogue Committee shall determine its own rules of procedure. 15, that the speakers and clerks of both houses of Parliament shall provide secretariat and other necessary support to facilitate the work of the National Dialogue Committee. Honorable Speaker, this motion is co-sponsored by myself and the Honorable P.O. Wandai, MGH MP, and the Leader of Minority. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice for that motion and beg the Honorable Kamket to note point number 13.
Yes. Minority Leader is a co-sponsored motion. I just want your concurrence in 1 minute.
Actually, Honorable Speaker, I do concur with the motion whose notice has just been given by the leader of majority party. And let me just hasten to add that this is such an important moment for this country, because it reminds us that every other time this country has basically gone to the precipice, has reached the cliff, it has always pulled back. And we can't take it for granted. We must be thankful to the Almighty for always coming in to rescue us. So I think we need to seize this moment and very, very openly and sincerely look at the issues that confront our nation and try to deal with them in a manner that will not only secure our country, but also make it safer for the future generations that will be coming. Otherwise, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Honorable members, that motion will be allocated time tomorrow, immediately after your engagement with the Minister for Tourism. It will be the next item on agenda. So majority and minority leadership be in the House to prosecute the motion tomorrow. Next order. Chairperson, Defense.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Dialogue Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations on its inspection visit to Kenyan embassies in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the state of Kuwait held from the 5th to 12th of May 2023, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 15th August 2023. I thank you.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, inquiry into the maize flour subsidy program for the financial year 2022-2023. Question to be put.
Order, honorable members. Order, Dr. Nyikal. Take the nearest seats. Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 8, that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on its inquiry into the maize flour subsidy program for the financial year 2022-23, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 7th June 2023. As members of that opinion say aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, consideration of the excise duty amendment regulations 2023. Question to be put.
Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 9, which is that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Excise Duty Amendment Regulations 2023, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 1st August 2023, and pursuant to Section 15.4 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2023, approves the Excise Duty Amendment Regulations 2023 published as legal notice number 40 of 2023. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, consideration of reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements for various funds. Question to be put.
Order, honorable members. Order. Member for Fafi. That is not how you should be when the speaker is on his feet. I now put the question at order number 10, which is that this House adopts the report of the Special Funds Accounts Committee on its consideration of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements for the Women Enterprise Fund, Coffee Cherry Advance Revolving Fund, Strategic Food Reserve Trust Fund, Equalization Fund, Mechanical and Transport Fund, National Research Fund, Youth Enterprise Development Fund, Uwezo Fund, and Civil Servants Housing Scheme Fund, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 15th June 2023. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, the Meteorological Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of Parliament to provide for establishment of the Kenya Meteorological Service Authority, regulation, coordination, monitoring, management, provision, and control of meteorological services and for connected purposes. Order number 12, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2023, second reading.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that we goes in the second reading of the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2023. I beg to move that it now be read a second time. Honorable Speaker, let me first take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to thank the Committee on the Committee Health and the Committee Agriculture, ably represented by their chairs, the Honorable Dr. Mutunga and the Honorable Pukose. Honorable Speaker, let me also note that these two chairs are among the, unlike many other chairs that we were discussing in the House Business Committee, the Chair Health and the Chair Agriculture have been very consistent and taking their work very seriously in the House, and indeed, they took a very short time to process this bill, being a bill that was being considered by their two committees. I must commend them for the short time that they took in considering and tabling a very good report. Honorable Speaker, access to safe food, as espoused in our Constitution, Article 43(1)(c), is a fundamental right. Honorable Speaker, if you read that together with Article 46(1) of the Constitution, then food safety is indeed not just a fundamental right that is guaranteed by our Constitution to all Kenyans, but a necessity, Honorable Speaker. That is why, being a food-related bill, we also involve the Committee on Health, because a lot to do with food safety relates to how food is grown. That is a matter that is to be looked at by the Committee on Agriculture. the harvesting, processing, transportation, retailing, distribution, storage, how you prepare food, that food for consumption, Honorable Speaker. And the Committee on Health had invaluable input in the both committees' report as to how you will prepare food in a way that you safeguard its safety and ensure that it's food that is fit for human consumption, Honorable Speaker. And not just food that is safe for human consumption, but also feeds that are safe for animal consumption or for our livestock, Honorable Speaker. And the same livestock, Honorable Speaker, also produces food in terms of meat or milk that will then be consumed by human beings. And therefore, it's quite imperative that we ensure both the food that is being grown and processed for human consumption is safe and secure, as well as that food that is being grown and processed as animal feeds for both domestic and even non-domestic animals, Honorable Speaker, since they, in a way, also integrate with human beings in their different environments. Honorable Speaker, food safety means that all measures put in place to ensure that the food will not cause harm to the consumer or to human beings who will consume that food, or to the animals, Honorable Speaker, that consume, when it is prepared and or eaten according to its intended use. Honorable Speaker, the Food and Safety Control Coordination Bill, which, Honorable Speaker, as I've said, has already been considered by the two committees, seeks to do a number of things. One is to provide for the coordination of the public institutions for the control of food and feed safety. Honorable Speaker, you realize previously we have had too many institutions that are dealing with the question of food control and food, both food and feed safety. Honorable Speaker, we are never certain who is it that we are certain that the food or the animal feeds that our animals are consuming is secure and safe for consumption. The bill also seeks to establish the Office of the Food Safety Controller, a person now who will be charged with that responsibility. And we know we now have a one-stop shop of an office that we know the Office of the Food Safety Controller has cleared certain foods for human consumption, then Kenyans can be certain that that is food that is both secure and safe for their consumption. The bill also provides for the role of the county governments in food and feed safety, because, Honorable Speaker, you do realize a lot of changes since the 2010 Constitution came in with certain functions, many in the agricultural sector other than policy formulation, Honorable Speaker, both in the agricultural and health sectors. A lot of the other work is designated under Schedule 4 of the Constitution to our county governments. And therefore, we seek in this bill to provide for the role that county governments will play in ensuring that how farmers produce food, how they transport their food, how processors of food process their food, and even how it is packaged, Honorable Speaker, that these food and also animal feeds are safe and secure for production. Honorable Speaker, the bill further seeks to ensure that there is supply of safe food and safe feed to consumers. And this being a critical function of both the national and county governments in fulfillment of consumer protection rights, Honorable Speaker, we have therefore ensured that within these bills there are modalities in which both the county governments and the national governments will coordinate through the Office of the Food and Feed Safety Controller, and the roles that have been designated under this bill or act, whenever it's passed, Honorable Speaker, to ensure that both levels of government play their role in ensuring that consumers in this country, and indeed even outside the country, for food and feed items that will be exported out of Kenya are fit for consumption, and therefore consumer interests and consumer rights are protected. Honorable Speaker, the bill also seeks to ensure that food is safely produced, as I said, also distributed, marketed, and prepared for human consumption from the farm to consumption. Clause 3 of this bill, Honorable Speaker, outlines the objectives, I've said, which are as follows. One, to effectively coordinate the performance of the functions of the competent authorities and enhance accountability in the implementation of official control. Honorable Speaker, as members may be aware, this bill shall apply to every competent authority and every person conducting food business or feeds business. The guiding principles provided for in Clause 5 for the implementation of this bill shall be as follows. One, Honorable Speaker, is the protection of human life and health. As I said, Honorable Speaker, right from food production all the way to consumption, through processing, through its marketing, we must ensure that we protect both human life and health. Two is the protection of consumer interests in the conduct of food business and feed business. Honorable Speaker, in this country, in the past we have seen, especially feed manufacturers, Honorable Speaker, who produce animal feeds for consumption by animals that will then either be consumed as livestock, as meat, or milk, Honorable Speaker. Others, like our poultry farmers, are consuming animal feeds that have been produced, one, under very unhygienic conditions, two, in environments where even the feed is exposed to elements that are harmful to the human body. And Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Dr. Nyikal, who has served as the Director of Public Health, will tell you there is a huge bearing in relation to the prevalence of certain non-communicable diseases and the feed that our animals feed on, and consequently human beings consume those animals, be it in poultry, be it milk, or be it beef or pork, Honorable Speaker. And there are indeed, there is scientific evidence that there are certain diseases that have been transmitted to human beings as a result of consumption of food that came from animals that have consumed feeds that were not safely produced or that were not fit for consumption by human beings, and therefore should never have been consumed by animals that will then become food to human beings. Three, Honorable Speaker, it seeks to the promotion of the use of scientific-based risk analysis. Honorable Speaker, this is very important because, as I was saying in my earlier statement there, without any scientific-based risk analysis, all manufacturers of animal feeds, for instance, Honorable Speaker, or even human food, have no basis of determining what ingredients they put in the feeds that they are producing. Honorable Speaker, you find people who are buying feed nutrients and importing them from other countries. In some instances, Honorable Speaker, we have seen instances where people import nutrients that are banned in their home countries, and they are then utilized to produce animal feeds here, and they consequently become harmful to our health. No wonder, Honorable Speaker, the prevalence of certain cancers. And again, Dr. Nyikal will bear me witness that there are indeed certain cancers. And I think the Committee on Health did also note that during their deliberations, that there are certain cancers whose prevalence, in a way, can be connected to the kind of feeds that are fed to animals, and then human beings consume products from those animals. Therefore, with the promotion and use of scientific-based risk analysis, we shall therefore be in a position where our country will be able to use scientific-based risk analysis to determine whether certain nutrients are useful to our human bodies and our animals, and whether they are safe for both animal and human consumption. Four, Honorable Speaker, is the promotion of food safety and feed safety, which I don't need to overemphasize. The fifth, Honorable Speaker, is the promotion of fair trade practices in the conduct of food business and feed business. Honorable Speaker, as I mentioned, the largest culprits, Honorable Speaker, are the producers of animal feeds, our livestock feeds producers. And the Honorable Agnes Pareyo will tell you, because she comes from a livestock rearing community in Narok North and the entire of Narok County, that very innocent pastoralist farmers are made to buy feeds that are produced by business people who are engaging in very unfair trade practices, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, there are no standards as to the level of nutrients, whether it's vitamins, whether it's calcium, whether it's proteins or carbohydrates that you need to input in animal feeds. And because nobody is regulating these people, they produce feeds that are filled with carbohydrates and proteins and no vitamin or mineral contents. And gullible farmers, because of these unfair trade practices, are allowed to market, the traders are allowed to market these feeds to very gullible farmers in our villages and in our rural areas. And the farmers innocently buy the feeds, believing that the feeds will allow their animals to gain weight and produce more milk or beef products. But woe unto them, Honorable Speaker, they end up spending a lot of money without any meaningful input onto the animal health of their animals or even increasing productivity. Honorable Speaker, because this government has purposed to ensure that we increase productivity, not just of the food that we are producing, Honorable Speaker, and that is why you have seen the President overemphasize on the need to use fertilizer. And I'm glad that the government, as from last week, Honorable Speaker, has now reduced the cost of our subsidized fertilizer going to our farmers, right from the 7,000 shillings that was there before elections, Honorable Speaker, to 3,500. And last week, the President did announce that the subsidized fertilizer now will go at a price of 2,500 shillings, all in an effort to increase productivity of our food productivity in the country. The same, Honorable Speaker, goes to increasing productivity of our livestock farmers to ensure, Honorable Speaker, that our farmers can be able to feed their animals and they're able to gain weight and they can be able to sell them for meat products. Those that are producing milk, Honorable Speaker, are able to produce more milk or more liters per cow than they could produce earlier. But this can only be possible if we have somewhere the food safety regulator or the food, this office of the food safety controller can assure farmers who are buying animal feeds for their dairy cattle that that feed will increase the productivity of their animals, and therefore put a little bit more coins or more money into the people's pockets, as we did promise during our campaigns, Honorable Speaker, that ours will be about what we call pesa mfukoni, or putting more money into the pockets of our farmers, both our pastoral farmers and our crop farmers. Honorable Speaker, the last is to increase efficiency in the performance of official control. As I said, Honorable Speaker, the myriad of agencies and authorities that have been regulating our feed and food safety, there hasn't been any efficiency in how our food and feed, either production to processing to consumption, Honorable Speaker, is being controlled. But now there will be greater efficiency with the enactment of this bill. And as I said, with the creation of the Office of Food Safety Controller, that is in Clause 6 of this bill, this will be established as a body corporate and a state office as defined under Article 260Q of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, the bill further provides that the county governments shall perform the following functions with respect to food safety and feed safety. Honorable Speaker, as I mentioned, it's important to distinguish the two roles of the two levels of government. Therefore, the bill has gone to list the following as a function of the county governments. One is to implement and enforce food safety and feed safety measures. Two is to license and exercise official control of persons who conduct food business and feed business. Because, Honorable Speaker, the committees did note during their deliberations and their scrutiny of this bill and in their engagements with stakeholders that there are many people who are producing food in their backyards, others are producing animal feeds in their farms without being licensed, and therefore nobody really knows what ingredients these people are using. Many others are also importing ingredients, as I said, some mineral nutrients that are even banned in their countries of origin, but are being shipped to our country and being incorporated into our feeds for our livestock. Three is to conduct capacity building on food safety and feed safety. Of course, as I mentioned, amongst our farmers, because they have that task, our county governments have agricultural extension officers We will therefore be able to build and enhance capacity building on food safety and feed safety with our farmers and consumers back in our constituency and in our backyards. 4 is to conduct public awareness on matters of food safety and feed safety. The county governments will also prepare county food safety and feed safety reports. 6, they will also provide a platform for the consultation and cooperation of county governments and stakeholders in the implementation of a multi-annual control plan. 7, they will conduct audits to ascertain compliance and enforcement of food safety and feed safety measures. Honorable Speaker, this is quite important because, as I said, what has been lacking is a system where even our county governments can enforce those who are licensed to produce, whether they are producing food or feeds, animal feeds, Honorable Speaker. There lacks a system where our county government officers can be able to scrutinize whether all these food and feed producers are in compliance with the law, whether they're in compliance with the relevant health and feed safety measures. Therefore, the county governments now will be able to institute such control measures and conduct regular audits in all enterprises and institutions, Honorable Speaker, that are producing food and feeds, either for animals or for human beings. Honorable Speaker, they also coordinate food safety and feed safety activities. They will also regulate and enforce official control, and finally monitor and evaluate implementation of the multi-annual control plan. Honorable Speaker, I don't need to belabor all the other functions of the national government because these are provided for in the bill, and members will be able to scrutinize the bill. And I believe those who have been able to look at the committee report will see the issues that were raised by stakeholders during engagement with the two committees, both on the health concerns of the animal feeds, especially that our animals are consuming, and also concerns on the handling of food right from post-harvest, Honorable Speaker. And I must commend again the Kenya Kwanza administration, because last week again His Excellency the President did announce that in anticipation of the bumper harvest, especially of the maize, following the maize subsidy program, the government is now investing in acquiring or in the procurement of food and maize dryers to ensure that all the food that will be harvested this year is handled safely. Honorable Speaker, you know from the area you come from in Uasin Gishu County, crossing all over to Trans Nzoia County. And indeed, last week, Honorable Speaker, even as I traversed Nyeri County, I noticed in Narumoro, in Kieni constituency, and I'm happy Honorable Shieni Wairaina is here. I saw farmers who had spread their maize by roadsides to dry their maize, Honorable Speaker. And these are some of the issues that this bill will be speaking to ensure that farmers are not drying their maize out in the sun by the roadsides. Because, Honorable Speaker, when you do that, you expose the maize and other crops that we dry using those traditional drying methods to other elements like lead that is coming from the vehicle exhaust systems. That lead gets embedded onto the maize, and in a way, Honorable Speaker, it ends up in being harmful to our bodies. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we must commend the government that now government is taking measures to ensure that when farmers produce maize, they will be able to dry their maize in an environment that is safe, in an environment that will be healthy, and an environment where Kenyans will be assured that the end product of that maize packet, maize flour packet that they get from their local supermarket is maize flour that has been grown or produced, transported, dried, processed in a very safe environment, Honorable Speaker, and therefore very safe for human consumption. Honorable Speaker, let me not belabor much because I had the hard task of choosing who to second this bill, since it was processed by two committees. But the Honorable Pukose prevailed on me that this is more to do with health, that we are talking about health safety. Therefore, he did request that he seconds, and I want to beg that he seconds, but also beg your indulgence, Honorable Speaker, that you allow the chair agriculture to also contribute to this bill because he is one of the very major stakeholders. With that, I beg to move. And to second.
Hold on a moment. Honorable members, I wish to recognize the following schools who are in the speakers gallery. Eronge Adventist School from Bochari constituency, Kisii County. Tasai School from Embakasi West constituency, Nairobi County. Garissa Academy from Garissa Township constituency, Garissa County. You're all welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to second this bill. I stand to second this bill, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, on the onset, I want to thank my colleague, the Chair Agriculture, the Honorable Mutunga, member for Tigania West, for having graciously co-chaired this bill together with me. I also want to thank the office of the Majority Leader that was also ably represented during our public hearings on this bill, on public participation, that we were able to do consultations with the office of the Majority Leader, being the major sponsor of this bill. Honorable Speaker, we had many interested parties in this bill, both from the Ministry, from agricultural sector and also the health. We had the PS Health representing the team. We had also members of the Public Health Union coming and making their presentations. And we had also CAPES and other AFA and other institutions who came in with their amendments and proposals. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank both the Committee of Agriculture and the Committee of Health for having actually attended all these meetings, and we had enough quorum and a lot of interest in this bill in far as creating this coordination body that will coordinate the public institutions in food and feed safety. Honorable Speaker, this office is a state office, and at one stage we were debating whether it should be domiciled in agriculture or domiciled in the Ministry of Health. But we feel that this is one of those offices that will be under the presidency, and through the executive order, the president will be able to place it properly within the presidency so that it can be able to coordinate all these other competent public institutions that are involved in food and feed safety. Honorable Speaker, one of the biggest challenges in this country is how to bring all these bodies together, how to bring the public health side together, how to bring those in the agriculture sector together to make sure that the food that we feed and the food that we take to sell in other markets in the national community meets the standards. At one stage, Madam Speaker, we were debating on whether do we adopt international standards when it comes to food or the national standards. And I think it became a very heated debate. But lastly, I think we agreed that, you know, Kenya adopts international standards. And if we have to go to the market, then we must use the international standards that are agreeable internationally. Although other countries, their standards might also differ. But all in all, we must be able to go with the international standards, because that creates room for us to be able to make sure that if we are going to take our food out of our country, especially those involved in food business, then that food must be able to meet international standards. We are talking of avocados. We are talking of maize, which we might be able to sell within other regions, and many other foods that our country is able to produce, tea, coffee, and many other foods. We're also talking of animal feeds. And once we have this food safety and feed safety coordination controller, then we expect that this controller is able to bring all the public institutions together. It's able to bring those public institutions together to ensure that the food and the feed, both to our animals and both to ourselves, meets those required standards. The majority leader has given issues about at times you even watch, at times you are traveling on the road and you look at some of the vehicles, lorries, carrying vegetables. The vegetables are carried in a lorry and in an open place with all dust falling into it. So I think that will be things of the past. At times you walk along the road and you see also people involved in meat butcheries, carrying meat in their bags. I think these are things that should be able to be done away with. And I remember at one time, even we had motorcycles and the bicycles bringing food to other institutions. I wouldn't want to say it is parliament, but when we were in the food and catering committee, we saw that some motorcycle bringing food for members to eat in parliament. So I think these are things that should be done away with, and with the food and feed safety controller in place, we expect that they'll be able to come up with regulations. And some of those regulations are best enforced through self-regulation, whereby you as an individual who is involved in food and feed safety must make sure that the food that you're going to give to somebody else to eat is feed for yourself to consume, not just for business, but you feel that this food is good food, safe, it is not going to be harmful to anybody else. Because when you look at our Constitution, Article 43, 1D, and Article 46, 1D, it ensures that the food that we are providing must be safe and good and make sure that it is healthy for the person who is going to consume. So with those two remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to second.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2023, be read a second time. Let me give the first opportunity to member for Garissa Township first, because he's got students here from his constituency.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the House, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all the students from all the mentioned schools, and in particular, Garissa Academy. Garissa Academy is one of the first private schools which were established in the whole of Garissa County. Interestingly, it's one of the schools that is owned by non-locals. That means non-Somalis from the region, which was established early 90s. It's one of the best performing schools in the county of Garissa, which is domiciled again in my constituency. I take this opportunity again to advise all those students who are here, who've joined the House, to take this opportunity to learn as they aspire to be the next leaders of this country. On that note, Madam Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to contribute on the bill which is or the motion which is on the floor of the House. As has been said, we are talking about the food and safety of our foods that we eat and the feeds for our animals. Madam Speaker, as you might have noticed, this country, we are facing very serious challenges on the issue of food handling, production and handling, as has been mentioned by both committees of health and agriculture. Madam Speaker, there's a high prevalence of cancer in our country. And we might attribute, some of us have thought about it, though not scientifically proven, that it might be the processed foods that we are importing into this country, which is not well regulated. We have a situation where any type of food comes to this country without proper regulations. Food handling in this country is very wanting, and I believe with the introduction of this Office of Control of Food Safety and Feed Safety, they will be taking care of this, of these things. We have seen situations where food is grown on sewage lines. It has been reported in the past about that issue, food feeds and which has grown. We have markets, we are expecting international markets for our animals, and that means we should be able to take care of the kind of feeds we give to our animals so that they meet the international standards. If you are to export any food item out of this country to Western countries, or Middle East, we face a lot of regulations, tests, procedures of how that food is handled from the growth period, from the production period to the packaging to the export. So I highly welcome the efforts of both committees of the House, that is Agriculture and Health, for the good work they have done. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I also wish to recognize Kapsabet Highlands Chesumei constituency, Nandi County, Sikri Junior Academy, Kasipul constituency, Homa Bay, and Tasia School, Embakasi West constituency, Nairobi County. You're all welcome. I'll give the chairperson for agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to also contribute to this particular bill. Honourable Speaker, the Food and Feed Safety Coordination Bill comes in basically to coordinate the control of safety in feed and food. Safety is important, Honourable Speaker, because lack of it would lead to infection and infestation. Lack of proper coordination, Honourable Speaker, on which institution plays which role basically leads to duplication of functions. And duplication of functions wastes not only the time and resources. Honourable Speaker, lack of clarity also is important. I mean, it's critical so that we do not waste time when we are dealing with the issues of food. This particular bill does come in to amend a number of acts. It will amend, Honourable Speaker, the Food and Drugs and Chemical Substances Acts. It will amend the Kenyan Dairy Act, the Fertilizer and Food and Animal Foodstuffs Act, the Pest Control Act, the Meat Control Act, the Biosafety Act, and the Standards Act as well, the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service Act, the Agriculture and Food Authorities Act, the Fisheries Management and Development Act, the Water Act, the Health Act. So all those acts are going to be amended in order to bring harmony to the functioning of the competent authorities that are supposed to be handling the food issues in this country. When I speak by competent authorities, I'm referring to the institutions that have the mandate to clear our food, either to come in or leave this country. When we import food from other countries, we rely on information be given by their competent authorities, which are recognized internationally. Our competent authorities in this particular respect, Honourable Speaker, the Council of Governors is hereby recognized, the Kenyan Bureau of Standards, the State Department for Public Health and Professional Standards, the State Department for Crop Development, the Pest Control and Produce Board, the National Biosafety Authority, the State Department for Livestock Development, the Plant Health Inspectorate Service, the Nature of Kenya, and also the Kenya Association. These are the participants who basically brought their presentations, some of them being competent authorities. The importance of having the competent authorities coordinate is because in the past, some of them have been claiming to play certain roles, and therefore these roles at some point have some duplication. Honourable Speaker, the other issue that is important is that we need to control feed safety, because lack of safety on the feed may lead to people eating food that is dangerous. So we need to be sure that the feed that is fed to our animals is safe. A classical example, Honourable Speaker, is a feed called, is a fungal infestation that is called aflatoxin. Aflatoxin, toxicant, can affect a human being. If we feed our animals on mold and grain, those animals are most likely to transmit or pass that particular fungi to the human beings. On the other hand, Honourable Speaker, some diseases called zoonotic diseases affect both human and animals. And diseases related to feeding, which could be of zoonotic nature, need to be contained in view of making sure that we have feed safety. So food safety, feed safety, in the other ones, is actually food safety, because the feed fed to our animals may at the end of the day affect ourselves. So there are institutions globally that are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the safety of food is well done. And in this particular respect, we have Codex Alimentarius, to which Kenya is subscribed. Kenya, having subscribed to this Codex Alimentarius, basically ensures that Kenya's competent authorities in food matters are recognized. Honourable Speaker, the reason why counties cannot possibly do business directly without passing through the national government is because competent authorities are single in a nation. We do not have more than one competent authority in a country handling a specific issue. So we cannot have 48 competent authorities, every county having their own competent authorities, and then the national competent authority. Kenya will be expected to have only one competent authority. And that is why coordination, when it comes to government and governmental relations, is very important when it comes to selling our products out there or importing our products from other countries. Honourable Speaker, consultations were rife on many issues concerning the food and feed safety issues. And discussions about, Honourable Speaker, clearly brought to the fore that there has been confusion. And this bill comes in to clear the confusion that lies in the handling, the issues of food safety control. That is why the establishment of the Office of the Controller is important. And the Office of the Controller will have regulations upon which the office will play to ensure that every competent authority will do their work the way it's supposed to be done. The Office of the Controller is not going to be a competent authority in itself. It will be an institution that will oversight the functions of the competent authorities, and therefore we shall ensure that the issues of food and feed are taken care of. Honourable Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to congratulate the chairs and the committee members of the two committees who have worked on this particular bill. That is the Committee for Agriculture and Committee for Health, to actually put in place a particular institution office that will be in charge of food safety and also control basically everything about food that we are consuming. Not only food, but also feeds for our animals, because we feed these animals in order that we feed on them, and if there's contaminated food arising from how we deal with animal feeds, then they are likely to also affect us. I want to look at this bill from the agricultural point of view first, before I just say something very small about the safety bit of it, which is also very, very necessary. That for me, the office so being created must be an office that will enhance the capacities of the farmers. The capacities of farmers in this country, both the crop-producing farmers and even animal breeding farmers, to have quality accessories that they will have as inputs to their crops. Honourable Speaker, what has made us be where we are in terms of hunger in this country was the fact that we lacked such an office which could specifically control the type of inputs that were being given to our farmers. And for quite some time, both in the food bed-producing areas like Kitale, North Rift, and other places, people gave up on food production because they were not sure of the kind of inputs that were being given to them. Just to mention a few, like fertilizer. How many times did we hear that fertilizer had been faked and therefore the crop had failed? From fertilizer, we had even the seeds themselves, that the seeds had been faked, and therefore the crop had failed. And all those inputs were being dealt with in a way that the farmers could not get value for their money. And I want to believe that this bill and this office being created, this network should actually arraign the quality of feeds, the quality of inputs that we are giving to our farmers. Worse was it also for those who are beef producers and milk producers, because how many times do we see those farmers get feeds? And so long as the feeds of a particular color, then is a feed. But yet it could just be nothing with any nutrients being given to the animals, and therefore the yields are small. So this has affected both the dairy farmers, the beef farmers, and has further affected the crop-producing farmers. We must invest, and seriously invest, like the Kenya Kwanza government has done, in food production. And if that must happen, then we must also have good quality feeds for animals, and also good quality inputs for crop farmers, which we are sure that the farmers will get their crop after they have invested in farming. And this is very good. How many times, and even during the last parliament, you yourself, Honorable Speaker, you had a bill on very many fake, what were they called? Were they called pesticides and all those things? This is where it's boiling up to, Honorable Speaker, that the farmers are not having the right quality of inputs that will actually safeguard food production. Therefore, from the agricultural point of view, this is a bill that I'm fully supporting so that we may enhance our food production. Now I'm happy fertilizer is reaching the last mile. Like in my constituency, Muhaya, for the first time, the fertilizer has reached the very last end of Bunyore land in Mulhoro in Luanda. Ordinarily, we would have to go and buy that fertilizer from far away in Chavakali. Now, this bill should actually enforce that the quality of that fertilizer is real, and the seed that shall be coming must be real, and everything about inputs must be real so that we increase the food production. I cannot belabor to speak about the safety of the foods that we are doing in terms of from the time we are planting, the processing of the food, the transportation, and therefore this may also be important in enhancing certain sectors within the agriculture, so that those farmers who are doing vegetables, who are doing floriculture and small-scale production of vegetables must have means of transportation, either them being helped to form associations, cooperatives, and other such like organizations that will enable them to actually make sure that the safety of the foods they are transporting and even processing is accurate. So for me, I want to look at it as an office that will enhance and not simply a policing office that will arrest farmers that, yes, you are processing this wrongly, but let them be capacitated to have the correct inputs and then later on monitored on how they are doing the transportation for safety of our foods. With those few remarks, I want to support. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Murungara.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to rise and support this particular bill. Particular bill on the food and feed safety control coordination. As we speak on the bill, we would pause and ask how safe is the food that Kenyans are consuming today. This is because the food control mechanisms in the country are not sufficient. We know very well that the only other law that attempts to control food safety in the country is the Food Control and Drug Substances Act, and it is not sufficient, and this is the reason why it now becomes important that a law is put into place to control the safety of food and also the feeds that are fed on our animals. We cannot afford to risk the lives of the people of Kenya by giving to them food that is not fit for human consumption. Thus, we must have some coordinated way of ensuring what Kenyans are fed on is actually good for them. We know very well that we do have problems with the fertilizers we use, the pesticides that are applied, and sometimes we are mocked in the country as to what you really place on the table, whether you know where it has come from. We are told that the best of the vegetables that we enjoy every evening and tubers that are grown all over come from places watered with sewage water, because this is what they do very well. We have no control over this, and we do not know whether we can establish it, but that may be true to some extent. We are also told that some of the animals, the meats that we enjoy, from whether it's beef, it's mutton, it's chicken, may be actually induced with some substances that make the animals to grow faster than they should, as a result of which you compromise your own health. It's vitally important that we know exactly what we are eating. And that's why today we must have this law that regulates the manufacturing, packaging, and distribution of food. Because in most times, the manufacturing itself, you find food being sold along the streets of Nairobi, Mombasa, the other towns all over. You do not know how that food has been manufactured. The packaging may be wanting, because in a quick way of making a buck, the manufacturer may not be able to package that food well, as a result of which possibly it's going to be degraded by the vagaries of nature, and therefore its composition changing. Distribution. How do we distribute the food that is eaten that is consumed by Kenyans? In most cases, we have vans that bring in all manner of food from up country, which vans do not qualify. They cannot pass the test of food safety in any way. Then we go to feeds, and this is what we feed our animals on. You go, you buy whatever nature of food you find in the market, you give it to your animals, and as a result of which, the beef, the mutton, whatever you get, the products you get from it are contaminated. This is because those feeds are actually not certified. They are not particularly produced in hygienic conditions, and therefore the food consumed by Kenyans becomes unfit. We also know very well that Kenyans are ingenious when it comes to adulteration of foods. In fact, we are always cautioned that whatever you buy, you must be cautious, whether it has the label of the Kenya Bureau of Standards, whether it has the other high quality assurance marks. You must be extremely cautious, because Kenyans are very good in adulteration. Kenyans are very good in counterfeits and other ways of ensuring that they produce look-alike foods, which cost much less than the real food, because they have to dupe Kenyans to buy that in haste and also in an attempt to make more money. I would give an example of some product in my local market. It's known as guzo. Guzo is said to be a form of fermented flour, which is supposed to, which comes from sorghum, which is widely grown in Tharaka. Sorghum, Gadam sorghum especially, is known for beer production. But guzo, which they actually use to make some local brew, which, thank God, now it's illegal, it may not be sold anywhere. The truth is, we are told that is not for human consumption. It is meant for animal. It's a form of animal feed. But we are able to adulterate it by adding a little bit of this baking powder and other additives, which make it ferment faster, and it is therefore transformed into some beer brewing process, which Kenyans find themselves in. Again, this is how ingenious we are, and therefore, when we say we are going to establish a control coordination office, this is welcome. Like the Kenya Bureau of Standards, like the liquor control boards and everything else. We want our food also to be controlled so that when you go to consumption, you consume a food that has a label showing it is fit for human consumption. This is a very welcome bill, and I do support, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Fifgt.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance, and I really want to support this bill. The issue of cancer in this country is really worrying. We are getting cancer, not just elderly people or just any other people, but even the children are getting cancers. So it is really worrying, and this bill has come at the right time. The establishment of this Office of the Food and Safety Controller will enable the country or the government to better track the cases of unverified foods and feeds. And therefore, what is coming out of late is that there are people who are sleeping on their jobs. And now that we have this office coming up, everybody will be alert. And I'm asking that we do a research, and especially for fertilizers that we are using to grow our crops. There is an issue of fertilizers. What are we giving Kenyans? We need to know what kind of materials are using to make this fertilizer. Why are we having cancers? Why are we having stomach problems? It's like everybody in Kenya has stomach issues. So I really want to support this bill. And because this bill will give us a framework of how the country and the government itself, how the food will be monitored, the food that we are eating. Is it the crisps that we are making, the coffee we are drinking, the tea, the carrots, everything that we are eating needs to be monitored, and not just yearly, but weekly or even monthly. And so, Honorable Speaker, I really want to thank the people who came up with this bill, because it has come at the right time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Deputy Speaker. Okay. The Honorable Owen Bayer.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this bill. Honorable Speaker, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill is coming at the right time, In this country today, what we consume as food and what animals consume as feed, which later on translate to be food to the human beings, is that field, that space is in trouble. One, we have a problem of preservatives. Today, you find meat in supermarkets. And when you find that meat in the supermarket, it looks very fresh all the time. Probably it has stayed there for 4 to 5 days. But you ask, how has this meat been preserved to this level of freshness? And they will tell you they have used certain types of preservatives. Those preservatives translate to poison to human beings and eventually cause diseases. So when we have an office that controls food and feed, then we are bringing to this country the safety of human beings. So, Mr. Speaker, food safety and food safety means a safe country. The safety of this country is not about the armies, it's not about the police, it's not about all those other things. The safety of this country can also be determined by the kind of food and feed that is supplied. So, Honorable Speaker, it's very important that we have this office, this officer that will come into office. But my caution, Honorable Speaker, we have had KEBS in this country, Kenya Bureau of Standards, that has been regulating standards of goods in this country, including food, including water. But how come we always have issues of food that has not been properly standardized in the country? The question of integrity, Honorable Speaker. The question of integrity. When we set up this office, we can set an office, a good office with good objectives and with very nice proposals on it. But if the persons occupying that office are people without integrity, then we are doing zero work. So as we put people into office to oversee food safety and feed safety in this country, Honorable Speaker, integrity should be the overriding principle in ensuring that we are safe with the food that we have in this country. Honorable Speaker, another important factor that must be considered, as a tourism destination, this country requires, within the shortest time, the establishment of this office. A lot of tourists and high-end tourists look at what is the food safety in Kenya before they come here. You know, once I went to a hotel in this country, in Malindi, and I realized that the billionaire who had come to that hotel had come with a whole plane load of food because he does not trust the food in this country. So I asked him, how come that all the food that is being prepared in this hotel is imported food? They said, even the tomatoes, even the onions, even everything had been imported. And this billionaire had come with a jet, landed the jet in Malindi Airport, and all food and everything, he had come with everything that needed to be cooked. And he told me, you know, I do not trust the food in this country. And we asked why. You said, you see, there's a lot of integrity issues in this country, so the food that is sneaked or that comes, that we buy from the market may not be very safe. I will name the billionaire later to my friend KKJ, who seems surprised. Because they are worried about food in this country. And the tourism sector in this country is actually losing high-end tourists because they are not very sure about the food safety and food in this country. For example, they will not buy milk from this country. Why? Because they think that animals in this country are fed with feed that is not of good quality, that has been compromised, and therefore they will import milk. They will not buy cooking fat from this country. And if you are a hotelier who deals with international tourists, you will import even cooking fat. You will import milk because the clientele demand that we have safe food, and therefore they will. So for us to boost the tourism sector in this country, we have to have food and feed control that can help this country in terms of tourism. Honorable Speaker, I would like to talk about Kenya being dumping site of food and feed that is of low quality. You see, the processes of importing food and feed in this country has compromised. You know, my children like certain food, noodles, you know, and you go to the market and buy a packet of noodles. And you look at these noodles and the way they are and the process that you know noodles, you say, is this really safe for my children when they eat these noodles? And you look at it and say, suddenly I wouldn't allow my children to eat these noodles. How does it affect children in future? We have young children now suffering from cancer. You go to the cancer ward here in KNH and you realize there are very many young children that have cancer. And then we are also told that food can be a cause for cancer. Then you ask yourself the question, how did these children get cancer? It's because of the food that we have. How then do we control it? I think this office, Honorable Speaker, will help us to ensure that the feed that our children eat, especially fast food, the fast food that is prepared in these fast food restaurants, sometimes does not meet the threshold of fit for human consumption. Honorable Speaker, as I wind my presentation, I would like to say this. although a lot of the diseases that we have, the cancers that we have, can easily be traced to food. But not just food. Feed. Feed, Honorable Speaker. I remember the Honorable Gladys Bosch-Cholet brought a motion on pesticides and I don't know whether she talked about fertilizers, but the pesticides that are used in our farms, where we grow our food, what goes into produce that plant, what goes into produce that tomato, what goes on to produce that potato, what goes on to produce that maize, might not be fit for human consumption. And therefore, we end up with food that has elements within it that can cause diseases. Honorable Speaker, it is time that we establish this office, and this office, as the leader of majority has said, is supposed to provide coordination of the public institutions for the control of food and feed safety. And that is very important because it needs to coordinate KEBS, it needs to coordinate this standards organization, it needs to coordinate public health, it needs to coordinate a lot. It is very important. Public health officers today, depending on how much money they are given, can satisfy an animal that died of anthrax to find its way into the butchery. Public health officials today, I have seen pictures on social media where donkey meat is finding its way into Kiambu. I saw that story today. And I asked myself, what happened? What happened that donkey meat can find its way into a butchery? Because there's a public health officer who will turn, by virtue of his signature and his stamp, will turn donkey meat into beef. Just that. Why? Because there's no proper coordination. This office, when established, Honorable Speaker, will provide for the coordination of the public institutions for the control of food and feed safety. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the office will provide for the role of county governments in food and feed safety. Now, Honorable Speaker, I believe in devolution. But sometimes what goes on in county government, you see, they hire a public health officer, not based on qualifications, high standards of qualification, but they will hire that public health officer based on who knows who. On that basis, that public officer can kill a whole community. We had very recently schools, 2 schools where children died because of food poisoning. I can bet a public health officer must have certified that food in that school as fit for human consumption. And yet we lost lives. We lost lives, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, what I would like to say that this bill is very important. I urge members of Parliament to have a bipartisan approach. We pass this bill to ensure that our children, our people, Kenyans, are not harmed, not because of hunger, but because of the food that they eat. That people die, not because of disease, but because of the food that they have eaten. Honorable Speaker, I support this bill, and I hope that when it comes to third reading, we will panel beat it and ensure that we give a gift.
Very well. The Honorable Caleb Luyai Saboti is in the House. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was trying to acquaint myself with the bill, and that's why I was running across to pick a copy. Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate, I think this bill originates from the executive, having been brought by the leader of majority, Kimani Ichung'wah. Mr. Speaker, this bill just ran short of collapsing all these authorities that were established to look at the safety of food and feed. That is the ministry department that dealing with veterinary services, crop development, livestock, the public health, medical services, the ministry in charge of fisheries, agriculture and food authority. Mr. Speaker, even if you just speak on the agriculture and food authority, remember we used to have various boards including the pyrethrum board, the sugar board, the crop, and other cashew nuts and the nuts board, and they were collapsed into one entity called Agriculture and Food Authority. The impact of what AFA has done by collapsing all this independent board that seems to have been given the same mandate, carrying out the same thing. And the collapse of it, of course, as the advantages of reducing even the cost of running, the monies that we put into these boards, and making them more effective. The Kenya Dairy Board, the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, Mr. Speaker, KEFIS is domiciled or mostly dominant in my constituency. One of their plants and the vast land is around my constituency. I've seen their work in the field of testing the health of the imported seeds before they are now relayed to the farmers. And of course, it was also a collapse of other small entities that were dealing with the same thing. And remember, we used to even have Kari and KEFIS were more or less doing the same thing. And now some of the functions were transferred to now what we call KALRO, that is now been more effective. Pest Control Products Board, Fertilizer and Animal Food Staff Board, National Biosafety. I agree with the intent of this bill because this is more or less collapsing all this into one. In fact, it could have even been more effective to have it into one entity with various departments relating to different areas of operation in terms of whether it is food or animal feeds or seeds, whatever the case. But the most important is to ensure that whatever comes into this country meets the standards of safety as pertains to human consumption. Mr. Speaker, I support the bill with the regard of trying to put most of these agencies on the board. And the Speaker, it is also paramount to note that most of the time when we pass bills in this parliament, we don't take so much cognizance of the operationalization of some of these authorities that we intend to form. We recently had to repeal a bill on social assistance of the vulnerables in our society. Just 2 years down the line, after that bill had been passed by this parliament, we had to repeal because it was impossible to operationalize that board. The authority that was envisaged to be formed could not get the much needed funding by the government. So the continuous enactment of several bills that eventually lands into a dustbin or in some shelves that are not being able to be implemented by ministries has always been our undoing as a parliament. So this is also a wake-up call to this parliament that we should not be passing laws so quickly, whether emotionally or out of national popularity. We need to look at them even eventually how we are going to make them into use. We need to make sure that as we pass them, we envisage a future that we have an organization that is well catered for in terms of exchequer funding and an organization that is going to stand the test of time. So, Speaker, this is the onus on this parliament to make sure that the bills that we pass here meets the quality standard of establishment that we need to have in this country with proper mechanism, with proper staffing, proper funding, so that we don't just pass bills for the sake of it to excite the crowd, to excite the people of Kenya, and eventually, later on, we are back here again trying to repeal the same act that we passed so that we either collapse some of the organizations due to lack of funding, operationalization for whatever reason. And the more so, Mr. Speaker, I have to say this. Some of these moribund organizations, they look like they exist, but they don't actually exist. They exist on paper. But in real sense, some of them are used as conduit of corruption. This is where donor funds are directed or misdirected for consumption of by a few people. So we also need to know the operationalization of some of these entities that were formed either by an act of parliament, by a legal notice, by executive orders. What was the need? What was the prevailing circumstances upon which these things were formed? Because they later on become moribund, they are used wrongly by unscrupulous officials we put in, and we misdirect our funds there. Most of allocation in some of these ministries, you'll find that they are allocated in a very more or less a makeshift organization. But because they have found a loophole in an act of parliament that we passed, establishing these authorities and the boards, then they have a legal standing to direct money there. And this is how the loss of money from various ministries have gone to waste. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support, but with a caution that as we pass laws and we pass acts here to establish whether it is a coordination body, whether it is an authority, we must also know how are we going to fund it. What is the nature of staffing? There are some organizations that you walk in from the CEO to the sweeper is from one tribe, because either it is regionalized, because of either is a region, an activity based on that region, and people think like if it is something to do with maize, then this has to be Rift Valley. If something to do with sugar, this has to be maybe Western, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it becomes a tribal entity. And you'll find that from the CEO downwards, all the people who are working there are from one tribe. So we also need to know, eventually, are these entities going to meet even the national cohesion parameters of making sure that all Kenyans also get a chance to be part and parcel and contribute to the well-being of the society. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support.
The Honorable Didmus Barasa, but before then, let me, honorable members, acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's gallery, or even if they have left, the following schools that have been here and were able to visit us. Number one was Eronge Adventist School from Bochari constituency, Kisii. We had Tasia School, Embakasi West constituency, Nairobi City County. And we have had Garissa Academy, Garissa Township constituency, Garissa County. Thank you. Didmus Barasa, you may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on this very
Sorry,
important
Honorable Baraza, there was also this one which was in the Speaker's gallery. Mount Kenya Baptist School, Nanyuki, Laikipia East constituency, Laikipia County. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on this very important bill and say from the very onset, I support this bill. This is a very important bill, Honorable Speaker, because one is going to create jobs that thousands of Kenyan children are going to be employed as food safety and feed inspectors across the country. And the second thing, Honorable Speaker, is that the country will also have an opportunity to tap into the skills of the very many Kenyans who have trained in terms of evaluating and inspecting food and feed to ascertain their safety, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and most importantly, in this era and time, there is no country, Kenya included, that can lose the population by consuming unhealthy food, by the cattle consuming feed that have not been certified, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, this bill will go a long way to ensure that the healthy status of very many Kenyans is not curtailed or affected by failure to ensure that the food that is available in our market is actually safe for human consumption. Mr. Speaker, I have a belief that by approving this bill, what we have been hearing about Kenyans consuming donkey meat, dog meat, food that has not been, is not good for human consumption. And I have a belief that once this bill comes into the force, that those stories will no longer exist in this country. I am even tempted to think, Honorable Speaker, that the food I've been eating may not be good, because I've always wanted to add some weight. So I hope that when this bill passes, we'll be able to know that this food is good for these purposes, is good for that purposes, that if we want to get energy, you will be able, because they're not just approving that this food is good for consumption, but they'll also add some kind of a footnote that this food is rich in ABCD. Because as much as we are aware, we learned in school, in home science about balanced diet, I know we have some food which, when you go to a hotel and you order, that I want to have food that is rich in vitamins. I am sure that some unscrupulous hotels will be able to sell food that is not rich in that nutrient that Kenyans will want to get. That if we want to get food that is rich in carbohydrates, I am 100% sure that the majority of the food that we eat do not have the requisite starch and carbohydrates the way they are written in. So I have a belief that these food and feed safety inspectors will go a long way, not just to ascertain that this food is good for human consumption, but actually it must contain the prescribed nutrients so that Kenyans get value for the money that they spend buying this food, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this is a very important bill. Like the leader of majority has aptly put it and explained in detail, is that we may be having the majority of Kenyans who are battling various mysterious diseases. Those diseases, 90% of those diseases may have come as a result of feeding on food that has not been certified to be secure for human health, Honorable Speaker. I am also a believer that we may have lost thousands of Kenyan people on some mysterious diseases by failure to ensure that the food that's available in our market is actually fit for human consumption. Mr. Speaker, we have also been told that the majority of the fruits that are available in our Kenyan market, they are never allowed to ripe through the natural processes, Honorable Speaker, that there are some additives that you spread on those fruits and they should be able to ripen very, very fast. So I hope that by the House approving this bill and the creation of this body will ensure that this type of things can actually be a thing of the past, and that each and every food that will be available on the Kenyan market must be food that has been properly inspected, properly been certified to be fit for human consumption. And I think the only thing that I did not see in this proposed bill, which I know, Honorable Speaker, that the House will have an opportunity through third reading to enrich it, is that we must have also some kind of penalties, some powers that this authority should have, so that in the event that they found an consumption, they should actually be dealt with. The law must take its course, and we will be proposing further amendments to this bill so that this authority must have some powers and also try to mention, or rather try to put in some penalties on those who will be found selling food that is not fit for human consumption, or rather food that have been outlawed. Honorable Speaker, to say the least, we are expired, or rather even falsifying expiry dates of particular foodstuffs, Honorable Speaker. And this must also be within the mandate of this bill, which I'm 100% sure we will, that those people also, they should be dealt with, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is not only ungodly, it's not just bad manners, it's not just against the law, but it's absolutely inhuman for an individual or a distributor to distribute food that is expired, to distribute food that has not been properly packaged, Honorable Speaker. We are told that we have a certain plastic materials that are not good for packaging food, and that if you package food in those materials, chances of those materials transmitting cancer are very high, Honorable Speaker. So this body will go a long way in ensuring that how we package our food, how we cook our food, is done in a manner that doesn't put the health status of both the human beings and animals to exposing them to very many diseases that are very rampant in this country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I am fully aware that some of the deaths that are registered in this country are as a result of food that is not good for human consumption. Like my friend just mentioned to it, that it is indeed a fact that every year we lose students for eating contaminated food. Every year the government of Kenya spends colossal sums of money carrying out investigations and testing on the cause of death for certain students because of the way the food is stored. And I will also be proposing further amendments to ensure that the mandate of this authority goes beyond testing food to ensure that the food is stored in a proper manner. Because if you test food today and you give a report that this food is good for human consumption, you are given a certificate. But when you don't store this food in a proper manner, then chances are that the same food will kind of deteriorate, will change the status that they are in because they are not being properly stored. And the same food that has a certificate of being good for human consumption, if again it is tested in another 2 or 3 weeks, it might turn out to be food not fit for human consumption, Honorable Speaker. So these are the very many things that we are going to improve, and I want to thank the Leader of Majority for bringing to the House this very good idea, and we will be able to assist him as a House by improving this idea into a better idea that will assist millions of Kenyan people. So, Honorable Speaker, I support.
The Honorable James Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is an extremely important bill in terms of health. I support it because the object of this bill is to coordinate all public institutions that are involved in control of food safety and feed safety. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we actually control food and feed safety, because food is the most important social determinant of health. We are what we eat in terms of health. Mr. Speaker, food can result in direct illness from infectious diseases, communicable diseases such as typhoid, bacillary dysentery, cholera, and all sorts of the illnesses that we can have. Mr. Speaker, we can also have non-communicable diseases, which is arising from the food we eat, starting from problems of lack of vitamins, which are common things, particularly in children, to serious diseases such as diabetes, hypertension arising from obesity, strokes which are arising from having a lot of cholesterol in our system. So these are all important. Or we can have chronic illnesses, chronic poisoning in food. You can have like fishes that is actually contaminated. There have been parts of the world where you have been serious contamination of fish leading to heavy metal poisoning like mercury. And those can occur even here, seeing how our environment is being managed. So the people who then get the fish needs to do something about it. You can have acute poisoning, Mr. Speaker, from the food that you eat. We often talk about food poisoning and we think that somebody put poisoning in food. In fact, if food have some forms of bacteria, it will cause acute illnesses that actually is called food poisoning. Some, if you take milk, you can actually collapse immediately because the milk is contaminated. Some, depending on how the milk is actually prepared, people put some things, even as things as bad as melamine, to make the milk look more thick and more rich. And so this, we need to look at all those things. Mr. Speaker, you can have long-term effects on foods that are actually associated with cancers. You can have that. Things like cancer of the esophagus have been associated. Cancer of the liver have been associated with the kind of foods and the contamination in foods. And what about the feeds? Mr. Speaker, feeds that are given to animals are an important part of the food chain. It gets into the animals and we eat the animals, the animal products. Again, that is extremely important. As I said, if you have things like aflatoxin and they're in the food, you will actually get cancer of the liver. So it is important that we get this. Mr. Speaker, sometimes when food is being produced, it can be contaminated. So, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the possible ways the food can be contaminated at the time of production, when we use fertilizers, what is the effect of that? When we use pest control chemicals, what is the impact they have on the food that we eat? What we put in the feeds. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, we have known that some feeds are actually, let me say, energized with steroids so that the chicken can grow faster. They pass this on to us. Mr. Speaker, during processing of foods, the storage of food, all these are actually associated with chemicals or other things that will actually make food dangerous to our health. That means us with that. So this bill seeks to bring that coordination and it actually establishes the structure, Mr. Speaker. It also puts in place processes for traceability. If there is food contamination from a factory, can we trace where this food actually come from? Can we trace where the food has been distributed to? Can it be distributed to? Can we recall that food? Can we follow up them? And Mr. Speaker, this is done through very many competent authorities. 10 of them, they actually are listed in the first schedule of this, from the ministries responsible for public health, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry responsible for fisheries, the AFA Authority, Kenya Dairy Board, Kenya Plant and Health Inspectorate, Pest Control Board, Fertilizer. All these, Mr. Speaker, actually are working independently. And during the discussion that we had with them, they are working in silos. But we live in a comprehensive manner so that the food in your house, it doesn't matter which authority is responsible for controlling which type of food. You just know that you want to know that your food is safe. So it is good to have somebody that is controlling them. So, Speaker, I support this bill again because it has put into the schedule what also needs to be, what laws need to be amended. Because if you look at this, they're actually under 13 acts of parliament. It's the office of this controller. It is the office of this controller. It has even put how this person is appointed, the qualification of this appointment, the structure of this office. And I hope that when that takes, start picking food from industries and checking them. That is not their duty. Their duty is to find out, is KEBS doing what it's supposed to do? Is KELFIS doing what it's supposed to do? If not, where is the problem and what do we do? Because if it does that, it will actually cause us a lot of chaos.
And if good measures were in place, then things would have been different. And that is why food and feed safety sure that food will not cause any harm to farms, but a lot of food again is bought by the consumers from the shops, from the market and all these places, that our people will always be safe. Mr. Speaker, this bill will provide for the coordination of the public institution for the control of food and feed safety, and will also establish the Office of the Food Safety Controller, which today is not there. By establishing that office, we will be able at least to serve our nation in a better way. I would want to suggest that as the offices are established, let us make sure that we make sure that we have taken good control of that. Again, Mr. Speaker, this bill will provide for the role of the county governments in food and feed safety. Mr. Speaker, today, when you look at what is happening in the counties, there is a lot of negligence in many areas in place. Then the county government will also be responsible in a way so that we don't only blame or look at the national government, but we also have a responsibility that the county government is responsible for. Mr. Speaker, we have people who feed on animals. We have people who have, the animals, the domestic animals like cows and goats as the institutions today. We do not have competent people. And the Bible also says, my people perish due to lack of knowledge. And when we have well-skilled people, people with enough knowledge, people who are competent in any of this bill, let us practice it in the best possible way. Let us put it in place without any corruption, without any compromise, so that issues that concerns people enhances accountability in the implementation of official control. Mr. Speaker, in our nation, accountability and good stewardship is what has been lacking. And it is my prayer that under Kenya Kwanza, funds have been lost for sure, and be sure of having that healthy society that I said at the beginning. Mr. Speaker, as we pass this bill, we will be sure of protection of human life and health. Today, Kenya is suffering because many of our people are suffering because of cancer. Many people tell us that cancer is caused by some food that once this will be put in place, I believe that we will be able to take and protect the lives of our people. And nobody knows. And sometimes the sellers take advantage and sell at a very expensive rate, or they take advantage on what they put on the shelf. When this bill will be put in place, we'll be able to protect the consumer's interest and conduct of food business and feed business. That will give us a better life in all the aspects. Mr. Speaker, again, the promotion of food safety and food safety. When we promote that, we will have people who will have less fear, because like now, in our country, many people are wondering, enough or healthy enough, or whether it is good for us to consume those things. But once this bill will be put in place, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that we will have a healthy society out of stress, and even we will have that, that psychological mind that is free, and we will be proud of buying whatever we find on our shelf. Mr. Speaker, efficiency in the performance of official control is what this bill stands for. And that is why I support it, because efficiency, it is only now that you find people in the offices working hard because they know that the president is also a hard-working president. And when efficiency will be put in place, then we are sure of the product and
Very well. Add 1 minute. Just conclude, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand to lend my voice to the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21. Honorable Speaker, when you read the memorandum and objects of and reasons for the bill, it's basically a bill to provide for coordination of public institutions involved in the control of food and feed safety. In short, and the long and the short of it, Honorable Speaker, is that the bill seems to be a superintendent bill, and indeed the holder of the main office, the holder of the office created here, is called a controller. It's essentially a superintendent bill. Honorable Speaker, Article 43, or economic right, economic and social right. So obviously at any given time, we demand international standards. Honorable Speaker, standards for any product in this country falls within the realm of the standard architecture. And the body authorized to make approbation, the mere even thinking by the executive, by the government, so to speak, to bring this bill in the House today is an acknowledgement. It's an acknowledgement that the bodies that have got authority to oversee food safety, to oversee feed safety, have failed short of expectation. It's not that we do not have the laws, Honorable Speaker. It's not that we do not have the regulations, Honorable Speaker. It's not that we do not have the inspectors and the competent people, Honorable Speaker. It is simple because we have continuously said that in this country what we lack is the will to enforce the existing laws. It's not the lack of the laws. So, Honorable Speaker, in essence, we are creating another bureaucracy. We are creating another unnecessary bureaucracy simply because we have not had the courage to tell those who are in charge of the so-called competent authorities, Honorable Speaker, mentioned in the first schedule. The competent authorities mentioned in the first schedule, and these the competent authorities, Honorable Speaker, is the ministry responsible for matters relating to public health and medical services. If they have done their work as required under international standards, professional requirements, there will be no need of this office we are creating today. Honorable Speaker, is the ministry responsible for matters relating to veterinary services, crop development, and livestock development. The ministry responsible for matters relating to fisheries, Agriculture and Food Authority, the Kenya Dairy Board, the Kenya Plant Health Inspector Services, the Pest Control Product Board, the Fertilizer and Animal Food Board, the National Biodiversity Authority, the Kenya Bureau of Standards. And of course, Honorable Speaker, in a way, indirectly, you must also add Kenas in that list. Honorable Speaker, we are creating a prefect. Let me call him in short. We are creating a prefect who will be nosing all over, asking, have you done your work? Have you done your work? If you have not done your work, why have you not done your work? He's simply going to walk around looking for areas of overlap between these various competent authorities. Honorable Speaker, we do not need to create an office to do that. The Attorney General is there. The respective departmental committees of Parliament are here. We have professional bodies all over there. Why can't you identify all this? Honorable Speaker, as the intention might be good, but we are taking the wrong approach. We are creating another layer of bureaucracy, and whenever bureaucracy upon bureaucracy, you end up with a system that does not serve the intention of the people. Many of my colleagues who have contributed here seem to have a wrong misconception about the structure of this bill. They think the controller will be working in various places to check whether the feed is safe, whether the food is safe. No. My colleagues need to read the act clearly, need to read the bill clearly. It is simply saying we are creating somebody who will be waking up today when he's idle, goes to AFA to check, are you doing your mandate? Yet Parliament here, that's the work of Parliament, to oversight the various state departments. Again, the mere thing of bringing this is an indictment that Parliament has failed. that members of parliament have failed in their role as of oversight. We are not able to question because we are driven by this thing called the tyrant of numbers, sijui loyalty, sijui what and what, things that add no value to us as a country. Honorable Speaker, if you look at this act again, bill, it proposes to amend various principal acts. Actually, in a way, again, this is like omnibus. It's a miscellaneous amendment bill that speaks to amend all those kind of other things, which would have been done in another more elaborate manner and without any particular way. Honorable Speaker, I can see here we are simply creating jobs for the boys. We are looking jobs for the boys because some of the things that the controller is supposed to do. Let me tell you, Honorable Speaker, when you go to clause 24, it reads 24:1, the controller in consultation with the relevant competent authorities shall designate a laboratory as a reference laboratory for conformity testing. That is a role, Honorable Speaker, already donated to KENAS, Kenya National Accreditation Services. And in the year 2020, we passed that bill. In 2019, we passed that bill here. It's an act, and we have an authority by that title. So, Honorable Speaker, what is it that we are trying to do here? Honorable Speaker, when you look at what has provided here, the powers and duties of the controller, it's cosmetic, it's superfluous, it's of no value. All that he can do is write a report to the cabinet secretary in charge of the competent authority, and that's the end of the story. There's no provisions for sanctions. There's no provisions to ensure that everything is done. We are creating a research body, so to speak, to document failures. We are preparing a body to document which hunting, who is not working every day, or a snitch who will be walking around and say, yesterday, I found rotten meat in butcher XYZ in Karumaindo. Where is the public health officer of the county government of Nairobi who did not go to check that particular meat? Whoever drafted this bill, Honorable Speaker, should have done much better than this. If they truly feel that the competent authorities mentioned in Schedule 1 are not working, what was the best way would have been, Honorable Speaker, to basically review and look where the lacuna is, where the shortfalls are, and simply ensure that that's done. When you look at, for example, at clause 18, when they're doing verification, they are saying conduct of inspections, taking of samples and conducting analysis. There is the government chemist, that is work. Why would you again ask the controller to do that kind of thing? Staff health and hygiene. The ministry, there's a public health department in the county governments that does that. Honorable Speaker, this is just a duplicitous process. We are creating tough wars, and unless the two committees, which are headed very competent members of parliament who have gone to school and understand things, they need to look at this bill critically and really give it a thorough shot, because that's what we are here. As Honorable Miss has indicated, we are creating a bill that is not capable of being enforced, being implemented, and is just going to be on paper, like when we have so many of them. And I can assure Honorable Speaker, in a matter of few months, the whole same lead of majority will stand there and bring amendments to this.
Giving me this opportunity, I stand to support this, but with a lot of amendments. This coordination bill, the Food and Feed Safety Coordination Bill, is bills. Food and feed are quite different. When you talk of food, you talk from the farm to the fork, from the farm to the fork. And from the farm to the fork, it involves various processes that all needs to be controlled, all needs to be checked in terms of quantity, quality, and safety. And from the seed itself, the planting seed itself, pesticides are we using? In this country, until the other day, we were using DDT, which was outlawed all over the world. Is our problem that food and feed cannot be brought together? The food involves growing the seed, using pesticides, nurturing it, sowing it, plowing it, harvesting it, transporting it, just one step after the other. For us to get quality food, and already, to support my friend, all this, we have laws in place. Our biggest problem is implementation of our laws to the letter. It's not creating new laws. And when it comes to feed, you grow, cut, and feed the animal. All those processes are not there. But still, we need to look at the quality of the quality and the safety of the feed. For example, if you want to feed your animals on silo, silo is where you cut some greens, put them under some pressure, roll them out, measure the temperatures at every stage, add water, sprinkle water, add molasses, cover it up, and by the time you are harvesting it, at every one time, you must remove it and check its safety before you feed your animals. So these are two different sciences. Why are we combining two sciences together? One is animal science, the other one is human science. You combine these two together, you end up in not performing properly ultimately, or you end up in two competent authorities fighting over it. One competent authority is saying, no, it is this. The other competent authority is saying, no, it is that. This is because the two competent authorities have got different focuses, and you have put them together. And I foresee where, if this bill goes through, I foresee where there will be a rift between the Ministry of Health and its competent authorities, the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock with its competent authorities. What we need here is, whether it is food or feed, we put the right quality, quantity, and safety in place. If you put in garbage in, you'll get garbage out. Yeah? You get garbage out. We are not able to export some of our products to the European markets and some other international markets because of our phytosanitary processes, which we don't seriously look after. We have competent people. Our biggest problem here is corruption. Our biggest problem here is lack of implementation of the already existing laws that we have. And we are not implementing our laws because of corruption. I remember very well that we got orders to export our camels through Mombasa port. We did two trips and we could not do it anymore because of corruption by our veterinarians. We diverted it. Today, camels, the Kenyan camels from the north is being exported to the Arab world through Berbera port of Somaliland, just because of corruption. We have the laws, they cannot be followed. So with this, I say that we need to think seriously about this. We need to separate the two. One of the great, the amendment I will suggest when it comes to maybe the committee of the whole house is to separate this as two distinct bills. And it's not the first time, I think. We had in the 12th Parliament, similar thing came, it was discussed and disagreed. The Ministry of Health people wanted it that way because they want to control the bigger thing, including food, including the feed.
while the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock wanted to control the quality, the quantity, the processes, and the safety of the feed, or feed of the animal. The animal digestive system and the human being digestive systems are quite different. The animals are, most of our animals, except a few, are ruminants with 4 chambers of stomach. So what they need is quite different. But we, the human beings, we are simple stomached. And what we need is something lean. And therefore, I strongly say the bill may be good, but it has to be separated, and let's have 2 different bills for food and for feed. With that, I say thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Adanachi, MP Mandera West. The Honorable Dr. Lillian Gogo, I know your PhD area is on food science.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank you for giving me this chance, and I want to thank my friend, the Majority Leader, for bringing this particular bill to the floor of the House. I thank him. We are talking about, Honorable Speaker, we are talking about a bill on food and feed safety control coordination. Food and feed safety control coordination. And from what I have read, Honorable Speaker, there is need, as has been proposed, to establish the office, the National Office of a controller to control food and feed safety. It is important, Honorable Speaker, because such an office has not existed, and if it is seen that it be there, would not want to oppose it. As we are aware, in Kenya, Honorable Speaker, the challenge that we have is implementing what is already existing. And as it were, we want to create an extra office, Honorable Speaker, whereas we have so many food and feed safety control officers rotting, or they are outside there, unemployed graduates, Honorable Speaker, in their numbers, who are trained in food and feed safety control. We have so many graduates, Honorable Speaker, of food science, and the way you have rightfully said, I have a Doctor of Philosophy degree in food safety, and I studied how to eliminate carcinogens that are found in sausages by way of nitrites and nitrates, Honorable Speaker, and I wanted to get natural means of making sausages pink, which is a component of sausage, but also making sausages last, which is done by nitrites and nitrates. But if not used at safe levels, nitrites and nitrates have been found, Honorable Speaker, to cause cancer. So I worked with a natural source, Honorable Speaker, by using fermented cabbage, and I used fermented cabbage to do what is technically called curing of meat, Honorable Speaker, and I used fermented cabbage to give a product that was akin to what is used conventionally, what is made conventionally using nitrites and nitrates. And this particular project was sponsored by DAD, the German Academic Exchange Service, and I owe them for life. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, we have had instances, Honorable Speaker, of food poisoning in our schools. We have had several loss of lives in one way or another because of a use of unsafe foods. We have basic components of food safety that we need to practice even at home, keeping food products at a good temperature, keeping raw from cooked. It is also important, Honorable Speaker, that we practice basic hygiene for us to get safe foods and feed. And also, it is also important, Honorable Speaker, that people who are trained with the elements of food safety be allowed to work where there are massive production of food like in our schools. Honorable Speaker, we have basic components. We have basic components of food and feed safety management that already exist in science, especially in the science of food, where we look at the chemistry, the physics, the biology, the mathematics, the engineering of food. We have what we call HACCP, which is the hazard analysis and critical control point concept, Honorable Speaker, that is used for production of safe foods, monitoring and evaluation of such processes. We also have good manufacturing practice. You just use cleanliness, use clean ware and utensils. But we also have ISO 22000, Honorable Speaker, that is used for food safety management. And also we have ISO 22003, which is a food safety management systems audit. All these put together, Honorable Speaker, should be able to help us manage the safety of our foods and feeds. Of course, the bill is covering a very large area, as has been rightfully been indicated by a member, and it would be important that we amend it such that we have the component of feeds and we also have the component of food, so that as we manage feed from the point where feed is made and to the point where it is consumed by animals to give us food, it is managed so that we don't have animals consume carcinogenic products that would end up giving us unsafe food. Also, in our phytosanitary practice, Honorable Speaker, we need, even if it is use of fertilizers, even if it is use of sprayers for taking care of our plants, it should be monitored well so that the plants that end up as our food is safe. But having said that, it is also important, Honorable Speaker, to look at the post-harvest technology. It is important to look at the post-harvest technology so that we don't have our grains cause a problem to us. That is in post-harvest technology. And also, Honorable Speaker, what bedevils us as a nation that I'm fearing, Honorable Speaker, that there could be a chance probability that somebody has sat down, because when I look at this bill, it is well intended, but I'm curious to know, are we forming an office for somebody? That is what I'm worried about. Are we because we already have the Kenya Bureau of Standards doing food and feed safety control. And we have established international standards, Honorable Speaker. I can see my dear friend laughing. Mheshimiwa, especially, this is so common in Kenya. We just sit down and we want to sit and just be nice, and we bring it to the floor of the House and we debate, but we consciously know we are creating an office for somebody, specific somebody, and then it is advertised, and after advertisement, we are targeting a specific person whom, because this bill mainly, after going through it, it has nothing to do with safety, feed, and food safety control coordination. It is more or less creation of an office for an individual. Is that what we want, Honorable Speaker? Of course, I wouldn't block it, because if it is well intended, then it is going to give a job for one food scientist outside there. So I'm comfortable with it. Or for somebody who has studied animal science, because they go into pains and they study the science of feed safety control. But I want to say this, Honorable Speaker. It is very, very important, Honorable Speaker, that our food and feed is safe. Either way, we must have food that is safe and we must have feed that is safe. So we will have to, at some point, amend it, and if it suits the purpose, then we should have two separate offices at their levels, probably another higher office at the apex. Then when we go slightly lower, we have one that deals with food safety control, and then at the next echelon, we have feed safety control. At the end of the day, we want to meet international standards. At the end of the day, we want to be seen to be giving to the consumers food and feed that is safe, Honorable Speaker, so that we even control the springing up of life diseases, like we have problems with diabetes, we have the cancers, and Honorable Speaker, we even have high blood pressure. But if we have control of our food, the safety of our foods, if we have control, Honorable Speaker, of the safety of our feed, then I should think we are going even to control the many, many diseases that have emerged recently that are a problem to this nation. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, grandson of Asumbi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Lillian Gogo. The MP for Tetu, the Honorable Geoffrey Mwangi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to lend my voice to the Food and Feed Safety Bill. And from the onset, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that something is fundamentally broken as far as the food systems in this country is concerned. And the evidence of that is the disease burden that we deal with in this country, and especially from where I come from, parts of Mount Kenya, non-communicable diseases, cancer is a major disease burden. And the experts are telling us that this is all because of what we eat. So, Mr. Speaker, it is very, very important that as a growing country, or as a developing nation, we find ourselves eating more and more of what we have not produced, what we do not know how it has been produced, and what we do not know where it has come from. And so we rely, as consumers, on all the upstream players in the food chain to ensure that they do, or rather that they meet their end of the bargain. And Mr. Speaker, it is then very important that every mother, every person presenting or preparing food has some level of assurance that the food they put in front of their families, the food they put in front of their customers, has passed the highest test of safety, for their consumers. Mr. Speaker, food pathogens, bacteria, harmful hormones, things like microbial resistance or antibiotic resistance are becoming very, very common things that we find in food. Also adulteration from raw milk. In this country, if you buy raw milk, you do not know what percentage of water has been added. You do not know if formalin has been added to extend its life. And this not only applies to milk, but also to other products like meat and poultry, etc. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at other products like honey, you cannot tell whether you are consuming honey or you are consuming molasses or a combination of both. So this bill could not have come at a more a suitable time, so that we can be able to protect our people from the burden of eating food that has been contaminated. Mr. Speaker, if you think as a country, we are also a country that is heavy on agricultural exports as our main source of, or as a big source of foreign exchange. And right now, we are encouraging increasing of exports so that we can also tame this runaway dollar. And those who are acquainted with the people who do exports will tell you of numerous times when their cargo gets rejected either at the airport, at the port of Mombasa, or at the port of destination. It is either rejected or totally destroyed because of not meeting a certain standard. And these include the issues that one of my colleagues raised earlier, the phytosanitary certificates and issues. It also includes the use of banned chemicals and pesticides. And in this country, there are very many pesticides that are coming from a few of our neighboring countries that have been banned in Kenya, that have been banned in our destination markets, but they still, because of corruption, find their way through the panya routes into the market. Either pesticides for spraying tomatoes or cabbages or any other horticultural produce, most of which are banned and sold to unsuspecting buyers because of these issues. So it is very, very important that to protect our export market, that we are able to control the pesticides that are being used and ensure that there are also sufficient penalties. Because it is one thing to pass a bill. It's another thing to ensure that the offenders or those who break the law have sufficient penalties to deter them from basically trading in these issues. And coming back home again, Mr. Speaker, while we are talking about food and feed, which is basically the food we eat and the feeds that we give our animals, I think there is also another dimension that we need to think about, which is very, very important as part of the food system, and this is water. And this also needs to somehow find its way into this controller of the food and feed safety, that we also have to control the quality of water. In this country, we have occasional outbreaks. Some of them are fatal, of cholera, of typhoid, of dysentery, and other waterborne diseases because of the quality of water. And we devolved water and created all these numerous water agencies, but who is checking whether all these water bodies that are domiciled within the counties are serving or are giving their customers water that has been properly treated and is fit for consumption? So again, we would ask that the controller of the food and the feed also adds water as part of the brief. But as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, we have a tendency in this country to cure all our problems with more laws. And more laws do not always mean that we get better outcomes. Because the law is as good as those who use it, the law is as good as those who enforce it. So it is very important that this new controller does not become a new hindering block or hindrance to trade by way of harassing traders, by way of harassing hoteliers, harassing farmers, exporters, which is what we tend to see in this country. That when a new layer of regulation is added, this just becomes an extra burden to traders, either by way of new levies, by way of new taxes, or just becomes another avenue for collection and rent seeking for those who have been put in charge of controlling these items. So it is important that this coordinator or controller does not become in competition with KEBS, who is already charged with this activity, is not in competition with KEFIS, is not in competition with AFA, is not in competition with Dairy Board, with the meat inspectorates at the counties. Otherwise, we'll just have created a new layer of corruption and bureaucracy, which is not going to serve our customers any good. So it's very, very important that this becomes a facilitative office to basically prepare policy, to basically prepare regulation, and allow the existing arms of government to continue to do their work, and even capacity build them to ensure that we have safe food arriving at our market, for the benefit of our consumers, and that also our animals are eating the right foods to avoid this, contamination or moving of diseases from animals, to human beings, like we saw in the case, of COVID. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the bill, and I support that this office is created, this office is facilitated, Again, Mr. Speaker, I sit in the committee of a PIC. And in the agriculture sector, we have about 30 organizations that have been created by this parliament, but have not been operationalized because either of delay or refusal by the parent ministries to operationalize them. So we hope that once this controller is created, funding is provided, operationalization is done so that Kenyans can get value for money from this office. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Geoffrey Mwangi. The Honorable Zamzam, the Member of Parliament for Mombasa County. Na utaongea kwa Kiswahili.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Kiswahili ni lugha tamu sana. Kiswahili inaunganisha Wakenya wote, makabila yote. Kwa hiyo napenda sana kuzungumza kwa lugha ya Kiswahili ili wana Mombasa wa pwani wanielewe vizuri. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimeangalia mswada huu wa leo Mheshimiwa Spika, na mswada ni mswada mzuri sana. Hasa tukiangalia masuala ya chakula Mheshimiwa Spika. Hakuna mwanadamu ama mnyama ambaye ataishi katika dunia bila kula chakula. Lakini cha kusikitisha Mheshimiwa Spika, mashamba yetu yanawekwa madawa ambayo yanaleta madhara katika afya yetu kupitia katika vyakula ambavyo sisi tunakula Mheshimiwa Spika. Na mimi nashangaa, tuna waziri wa afya, tuna waziri wa ukulima, tuna waziri wa mazingara, tuna hawa mawaziri wote, tuko na KEBS. Kwa nini sasa leo sisi tunatafuta idara ambayo itakuwa ina control mambo ya chakula na ile chakula pia ya wanyama? Ni kwa sababu Kenya tumeingia katika mambo ya uvivu. Hizi idara ambazo zimepeanwa na mawaziri wamekuwa wavivu kufanya kazi yao. Ndio maana leo sisi kama wabunge tuna waziri wa afya, tuna waziri wa ukulima, tuna waziri wa wanyama, lakini hawa wote haijawafunukia kuwa Wakenya wanakufa kwa masala ya kansa, Wakenya wanakufa kwa sababu ya food poisoning na vyakula vimetoka kule mashambani ambapo kuwa wao ilikuwa inafaa wawe wanaangalia. Mheshimiwa Spika, itakuwa sisi tualeta mijadala ndani ya bunge, tualeta misaada ndani ya bunge, wakati kuna mtu amekaa mahali anapokea mshahara, anajiangalia vizuri, anaendesha gari zuri, yule Mkenya ambaye ni maskini kule chini anapewa chakula kibovu, chakula kinamuua, na wakati waziri wa afya, waziri wa ukulima, waziri wa mazingara wote wako na wanapata mshahara katika taifa hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, inatamausha sana nikiangalia mahindi ambayo yanawekwa kwenye magala yetu, mahindi, mchele, maragwe, ngano, utapata zinaekiwa zile dawa aflatoxins. Na hizi ziko wazi, hata mtu akienda kusaga mahindi unapata ile harufu iko wazi. Na hawa wanaokula hasa si ndugu zetu sisi ambao tuko ndani ya bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, manake sisi tutaenda tutanunua maize, tutanunua hostess, lakini yule mama kule mashambani, yule mpiga kura kule mashambani, yule ambaye anakatwa ushuru kule mashambani ndio anakula chakula ambacho kina sumu. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nimekaa katika taifa la Saudi Arabia na nimeona wakiweza kuleta chakula ama nyama kama vile ng'ombe, wanaleta kuku, wanaleta mayai, wanatoa South Africa. Kwa sababu gani? Wale wameboresha afya ya chakula katika mashamba, wameboresha namna ya mimea yao katika mashamba yao. Na ukiangalia hapa kwetu Mheshimiwa Spika, unaangalia ndizi imetolewa sokoni leo asubuhi, jioni ndizi imeiva. Ndizi imeiva, iko tayari kabisa kuliwa. Unajiuliza, hii ndizi sisi kina nyanya zetu walikuwa wakivundika, wanazivumba vizuri, wanafinikia vizuri ipate joto ndio ipate kuiva. Lakini ndizi inatoka sokoni leo, jioni tayari iko ndani ya supermarket, watoto wetu na familia zetu wanakula. Mheshimiwa Spika, inatamausha sana. Wewe waweza kuchinja ng'ombe leo, ukachukua ile nyama, ukiweka mahali Mheshimiwa Spika, ikifika jioni anza kutoa harufu. Lakini nenda katika supermarket zetu, nyama iko nyekundu, iko fresh kama ambayo imetoka kuchinjwa sasa hivi. Lakini waziri wa afya amenyamaza, waziri wa mifugo amenyamaza, yule wa KEBS. Manake hii yote mimi nitasema ni corruption. Ni corruption ambayo inaregesha Kenya nyuma. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni wakati sisi kama wabunge tuvute akili zetu, tupanue akili zetu. Wakija hapa mawaziri, tusimame sote bila kuangalia chama, bila kuangalia wapi na wapi, tuwaulize maswali ya kujenga taifa hili. Tusiweze kujifinya chini tukaacha Wakenya wanahangaika. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi kila siku napata ndani ofisi yangu cases za kansa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kama mama anasikia vibaya kwa sababu Wakenya wanalishwa vyakula na nyama ambayo ni mbovu. Mheshimiwa Spika, huu mswada wa leo ninapoangalia ni mswada mzuri sana ambao umeletwa na ndugu yetu wa Kimani Chungwa. Lakini mheshimiwa, ikiwa wizara ziko, ikiwa idara zipo, kwa nini tuweze kutafuta ofisi ambayo itakuja tena kuangalia masala haya yote wakati kuna mahali watu wamekaa wanalipwa mishahara na waangalii maisha ya Wakenya? Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi napenda kusema hivi, ikiwa ofisi hii itatungwa na iweze kuhakiki Wakenya kuwa mambo ya chakula yataenda shwari, basi na tuangalie katika hizi wizara kina nani ambao watafutwa kazi, ili tukitengeza ofisi hii kuandika wengine kazi, wale ambao hawako kazini, hawafanyi kazi, hawajibiki, nao tuwatoe katika makazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, samahani na uchungu kwa sababu mimi ni mama, na ukienda pale maternity, Mheshimiwa Spika, utapata watoto wanazaliwa hali zao ukiziangalia za kutamausha, kwa sababu mama amekula chakula ambacho kimeingia uchafu. Ukiingia hapa Nairobi, kwanza hapa Nairobi, samahani Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna sukuma ukiziangalia pale zimeng'ara kweli. Zimeng'ara kweli, lakini ukiangalia mahali zinapandwa ni katika majitaka. Mheshimiwa Spika, zile chemicals ambazo zilitumiwa katika majumba ya watu yakaingia kule mpaka mashambani, imeingia na ile mbegu imemea na ule uchafu wote na zile toxins zote zimeingia ndani. Mheshimiwa Spika, leo sisi tuuziwa sokoni hizi mboga bila watu kujali kuwa anayekula chakula hichi afya yake itakuwa vipi. Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini waziri wa afya amenyamaza, waziri wa kilimo amenyamaza. Na mimi nataka kusema hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, leo mimi nitazungumza nikitetea wakulima. Mheshimiwa Spika, isijekuwa kuna mtu mahali amepiga mahesabu vizuri, ashajua mvua inanyesha na ana mashamba, anatafuta njia ya kucontrol vyakula ili yeye aweze kupata namna ya kusafirisha vyakula kutoka Kenya akipeleka nje, afungie wakulima wengine. Mheshimiwa Spika, ikiwa ofisi hii ina nia nzuri, basi kama mama Mombasa mimi nitaipigia pondo, nitaweza kuisupport. Lakini ikiwa ina nia ya kuweza kudunisha wakulima wetu, wakulima hata ukiangalia sehemu ambazo wanatoka, Mheshimiwa Spika, inawapatia uvivu wa kuingia shambani. Mheshimiwa Spika, wamekuwa wakilima vyakula, magala yamejaa mahindi, magala yamejaa mchele, lakini sisi totoa mchele kutoka nje, totoa mahindi kutoka nje. Yale tunayaleta humu kama sukari tulipata pia yana sumu. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi najiuliza hili bunge litakuwa likitunga sheria kila siku, na kila siku sisi ambao tuko katika serikali tunaona mambo yanatendeka na sisi tumenyamaza. Mgala muweni, haki yake mpeni. Tuheshimu wakulima wa taifa hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimeona hata kule Mumias wakulima wanalia kwa sababu ya miwa, lakini sukari inatoka nchi zingine ambazo sisi hatuzielewi. Tukishakunywa tumeteuka. Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati ule ushakunywa chai, sasa unasema wacha niangalie habari, nikae mimi na thamosi yangu, unakuja unaona imeandikwa kuwa sukari za sumu zimeingia ndani ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, tushakunywa, imeingia ndani ya mwili, ilo baki inakuwa ni sori. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, serikali iwajibike, mawaziri wawajibike. Na lao kama kuna waziri ambaye haelewi kazi yake, Mheshimiwa Spika, waziri yule aondolewe. Ndio maana sisi tunamwambia rais, weka wale watu ambao wamebobea katika sekta fulani. Ikiwa ni sekta ya kilimo, weka yule mtu ambaye yuko professional, anajua huu mmea, hii shamba, ile mchanga ina rutuba kiasi gani. Je, huu mchanga una sumu? Je, haya maji ambayo tunanyunyuzia mimea ina sumu? Huyo ni waziri wa mazingira. Mheshimiwa Spika, la sivyo mimi naomba pia waweze kuweka vichwa vyao pamoja, waziri wa mazingira, waziri wa kilimo, waziri wa wanyama, waziri wa mimea, wote waziri wa kitu gani sijui, wote wakae pamoja, waweke vichwa vyao pamoja, na hasa nikilenga watu wetu wa KEBS. Munapitisha vitu vinaingia vikiwa vina sumu katika taifa hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi natamaushwa sana, lakini mjadala huu ni mzuri sana na upigia pondo, naweza kuusupport, isipokuwa ikiingia tujue ile ofisi inaingia watu gani, isije kuwa ni ofisi ya kuweza kunyima Wakenya haki zao, isije kuwa ni ofisi ambayo itakuja kumwangalia mtu mmoja ama mkulima mmoja, iangalie wakulima wote. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikifikia hapa nashukuru sana alioleta mjadala huu na ile docket ya docket ya health na livestock, na wapongeza sana wale ambao wameshughulika kutengeza mswada huu.
Mheshimiwa mjumbe wa jimbo la Bomet, Mheshimiwa Beatrice Kemei. Wa Kericho, pole. Unajua Mheshimiwa Zamzam wa Mombasa jimbo akianza kuongea Kiswahili zapotea kutoka kwa speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish I can speak like her. But even for you, Honorable Speaker, you have been defeated by her Kiswahili. I saw you are really enjoying. And I think we need some classes for the same. And Honorable Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I stand to support this bill, knowing that, Honorable Speaker, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination bill is very, very important. With this knowledge that, Honorable Speaker, there is no current legislation, legal and policy framework that gathers for the same. So this bill has come at the right time. When the bill was being moved by the leader of the majority, Honorable Ichungwa, and then seconded by the chairman of health. And we also have the chairman of agriculture, or this part of agriculture coming in to support. I want to appreciate this fact that we have health as a department, as a ministry. We also have agriculture as a ministry. Both have duties and responsibilities. But when it comes to these safety measures, we realize that none can take responsibility. So having this bill that is concerned with food and safety control is very, very important. So that in this case, the institutions, including schools, even hospitals, colleges, and the like, will be guided. County governments on the same will be guided. So I want to support this particular bill. Honorable Speaker, food is key, and as it has been said, if you want to enter into somebody's heart, that is to say, for somebody to appreciate you, it is through the stomach, and that is food. But food can actually be a problem, it can be a blessing. Contamination of food is where we have an issue. So that in this case, when we talk of food, we are talking of production from the time we plant the agricultural food, and from the time it is harvested, stored, transported, and even in the stores and the like. All that supply chain is very key. We realize, Honorable Speaker, that we are concerned with food security in this country. Many times we have food surplus, but how to preserve is an issue. And therefore, this bill will come handy in line with that. Honorable Speaker, we have perishable food. We have milk, for example. We also have fruits and vegetables. We also have dry food, or dry food, like maize, the cereals for that matter. how we preserve them for use in the future is key. We have lost lives because of food poison. This is the time when we need to come forth and support this bill so that we will not have the food poison, we will not have issues in schools, we will not have issues even at home. So that is why I'm talking of, even as we do the marketing, are we marketing the right food that has been preserved the right way after processing? Honorable Speaker, the chemicals that are used is interesting. And just like my colleague spoke about it or spoke to it, you may look at cases of even poultry, how it is preserved is very interesting. So I would actually support this bill, noting that the county governments must also come handy in doing public awareness so that people will know ways and means of having food safety and the measures that they can use. I would also say that the county governments, knowing that health agriculture is also developed, will actually know these public health officers should be going even to the villages to let our people know how to preserve their food. Honorable Speaker, you realize that the life expectancy has gone down. And the main reason for this is the lifestyle, the food that we eat. And interestingly, the days of our mothers, our grandmothers, even water, they didn't even take water from the fridge, but they used the traditional fridge, and that water was safe. Knowing that there is so much pollution, even our water is not safe for drinking. Our rivers are polluted. So in this case, I would say that we have to take it seriously and make sure that this bill pass actually, and it will save us. Honorable Speaker, I would also want to say that when we look at our schools, we are all aware that sometimes we lose our children. It is the storage. The stores may be very small, and even what we used to store, for example, the maize and the beans, is one thing. Not to forget the pesticides that we use, the pests that attack actually our food is a problem. So when all this, when there is coordination, it is very, very important, and I believe there will be no blame game that it is the Ministry of Health that has not supported us or has not done the right thing. It is not the Ministry of Agriculture that has not done the right thing. Honorable Speaker, I would also want to echo what my colleagues have said, that these are the many bills that we have, the many departments and in the ministries that we have. People should up their game and work so that whatever we pass here is implemented to the letter. And that is when we will actually know we have done the right thing. As I said, capacity building is also very, very important. Sometimes the people who come in place, the officers who are put in place for this matter may not be competent. So capacity building is also key for us. When it comes to animal feeds, Honorable Speaker, it is important for us that the meat that we take is actually safe. In some places, Honorable Speaker, when the cow is very sick, the farmers would want to sell, to dispose. And this disposing, they dispose in form of to the butcheries. and that is when our people consume the meat that is not safe. The plants, the feeds that are used for these animals matters a lot. So that if we are to be on the safe side, let's have this bill, but it should be implemented to the letter. And as the other members have said, it is not geared towards getting an individual, but not forgetting that this is for posterity. It is not meant for one person. Even if one person was targeted this time, those people cannot live forever. So the people.
The MP for Kisauni, Ndugu Rashid Betsimba.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker.
And honorable members, I would urge that we look at the objects of the bill as stated on top there, even as we debate. This bill is not about food or feed safety, but providing a coordinating mechanism around agencies dealing with that and creating the Office for Food Safety Controller. And I hope Honorable Karoli, Honorable Milio Diambo and others are preparing to deal with that aspect. I would also want to request the members to conscript our debate, if possible, within 5 minutes, because from the indication I have, debate on this bill is ending today. Honorable Betsimba.
Sawa Mheshimiwa Speaker, na kushukuru kwa mwongozo huo, na nitaenda kwa haraka kwa sababu ya wenzangu pia wapate muda na fursa ya kuchangia. Mimi nimesimama kuunga mswada huu kwa sababu na imani imetokana na wizara muhimu ambazo wizara mbili zimekaa chini zikakubaliana kwenye mswada huu ambao ni Wizara ya Afya, Wizara ya Kilimo. Kwa hivyo na imani kwamba hii ni jambo muhimu sana ambalo litasaidia taifa. Ubora wa chakula ni jambo muhimu sana. Na pia ninapongeza kwa sababu itahusisha serikali ya ugatuzi ili pia iweze kuboresha usambazaji ubora wa chakula katika masoko yetu, na tuna imani kwamba wakihusishwa wao mambo mengi pia yatakwenda sawa. Mheshimiwa Spika, ubora wa chakula ni jambo muhimu sana kwa taifa. Wakati chakula kimekuwa salama, basi magonjwa yanapungua, inakuwa serikali haipati uzito wa kuagiza madawa kutoka serikali za ng'ambo. Inakuwa wananchi wake wako salama, wako na afya, inakuwa imesaidia kiwango fulani. Na pia Mheshimiwa Spika, ubora wa chakula ni jambo muhimu sana. Unaona saa hizi katika taifa letu saratani imeenea sana. Ni kwa sababu ya vyakula ambavyo si salama watu wetu wanatumia. Na ubora wa chakula unaanzia katika shambani, kuangalia ni mbolea aina gani imetumika pale, na chakula kimetolewa vipi katika shamba kufika masoko katika wale wananchi ambao wanakwenda kukitumia hicho chakula. Na wananchi wanategemea viegezo ama mashirika ya kiserikali ili kuweza kuwasaidia. Wao hawana uwezo wa kujua kuchunguza chakula kimetoka vipi katika shamba, lakini mashirika ya kiserikali ndiyo kazi yao. Lakini sababu hawashughuliki, sababu ufisadi umekuwa mwingi, ndio sasa mwananchi anakwenda kupata chakula kisio salama, inakuwa anapata masaratani na magonjwa mengi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ambao watu wanatumia. Nitakupa mfano. Wale kuku ambao ni wa grade, wanaitwa kuku wa grade, kuna dawa fulani ambazo wao wanapewa, na wakishapewa inakuwa inabidi wakae kama siku 7 kabla ya kuchinjwa. Lakini kwa sababu hakuna mtu anayechunguza jambo hilo, wale wanachinjwa, wanaletwa, bado ile sumu iko kwenye nyama hiyo, watu wanakuja wanatumia. Mboga zetu zinanyunyizwa dawa, ambazo zile dawa kabla ya ule muda wa kuuzwa tayari mtu anatoa katika shamba, anaona wacha mimi nimepata soko nikauze. Ni kwa sababu hakuna mtu ambaye anashughulika. Taifa ambalo lina chakula bora, utalii ni moja katika chakula ikiwa bora, wananchi watatoka ama wageni watatoka sehemu tofauti kuja taifa la Kenya kwa sababu wanajua pale tuna imani kwamba chakula chake kiko bora, na sasa tukenda pale afya yetu haitadhoofika. Lakini leo kama ilivyo wazungumzaji wengine, mtu amekunywa chai amemaliza, ndo mnaandika hapo kwa TV kwamba kuna sukari ya sumu ambayo imeingia. Hiyo ni kitu cha kustaajabisha. Mheshimiwa Spika, watu wetu wanapata shida, unakula sumu, Watu wetu ni wagonjwa. Wewe ingia kwenye matatu, kama hujaingia siku nyingi Mheshimiwa Spika kwenye matatu, ingia kwenye matatu uona mtu anatoka kula tumbo la ngurumo, utafikiri kwa pigwa ngoma ndani. Kwa sababu hii chakula amekula si salama. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hii kamati ama hawa wanaotaka kutengeza ofisi hii, wawe ni watu ambao watajitolea. Sisi tunakubali ofisi hiyo iundwe, lakini wale watakavyotekeleza kazi zao ndio hatujui. Angalia sasa, kuna mambo kama miraa, kuna mugoka, watu wanapigwa dawa kula haijatulia, inaletwa masokoni. Angalia sasa, vijana wetu wengi ni wandazimu kwa sababu ya zile dawa za sumu ambazo ziko pale. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi pia nimesimama kuunga mkono na nitoe fursa kwa wengine ambao watachangia pia mswada huu. Asante sana.
Asante sana ndugu Bedzimba. Mheshimiwa Millie Odhiambo. Honorable Karoli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to make very brief comments. But even as I make these brief comments, I just want to say that coincidentally, Easy Coach, I've seen some comment from Easy Coach. I think they had said that there will be no more carrying of fish. And he says, following complaints by some of our clients on poorly packaged fish products contaminating their accompanied luggage, we temporarily suspend the carrying of fish products as accompanied luggage in our buses. Then after a complaint, they said the suspension has been lifted and you can now carry your fried, dried, smoked, salted, mbutangege, kamongo, omena, etc. Mr. Speaker, I'm actually just mentioning this because, as I said, coincidentally it deals with almost similar issues. And Mr. Speaker, I don't want to speak too much to issues of food and safety control because I think we have very many comprehensive laws. I've looked at this bill and I'm having a lot of difficulty in supporting this bill. And the reason why I'm having a lot of difficulty in supporting this bill, in terms of the principle behind it, I have no problem. But I think that the best way that this bill should have gone is to bring an amendment to the AFA Act and create the position of a controller within the AFA Act. Because normally when a bill is brought, it is supposed to cure some mischief. And I think the major mischief that is being cured here is creating a job, which is not problematic. We can always create jobs. There are so many Kenyans without jobs. So if we have a controller and we have created a job, there's no problem. But I think we don't need to bring a whole law to create a job. So for me, I think what we should have done, as I've said, is to include the AFA, do an amendment to the AFA Act to provide for the position of a controller. The other issue that I have a problem with, Mr. Speaker, is that if you look at the issue of traceability, because even the subsequent amendments to other bills, if you see, it's the issue of primarily the issue of who has authority in terms of control, so that you see when there's a conflict, it is being given to the controller. But the other big issue is the issue of traceability. Mr. Speaker, traceability is core. Yeah, like for instance, if you are talking the reason why, for instance, the Easy Coach may have raised this issue, like if there's a problem with some of those food substances, maybe there will be a problem in traceability. But I think transferring these standards to other agencies for me is not right. What would this controller be doing primarily? The controller himself should set standards of traceability, not transfer it to another agency, and then you only come to oversight and say, okay, what are your standards? Are you following your standards? No, I think these standards, if you are creating an entire bill for an office or a person, then they should have some substantive work, not be some sort of roving ambassador. Then the other challenge and problem I have, even though I'm not supporting the bill, but because it is likely to pass anyway, I will propose amendments. Mr. Speaker, I think some members have spoken to the issue and I'm also speaking to it. I have a problem of putting food and feed in one bill because it creates confusion. Even if you look at the issue of the, qualifications of the person who will be controller, it's either a person with either or, because it's very difficult to have a person who has expertise in food and expertise in feed. But I think if you actually look at the issue of feed, there's a lot of disservice on the issue of feed because the primary aim is actually on food, not feed. So I think there should be another amendment to another law that focuses mainly on animals and not on humans. And Mr. Speaker, the other issue I have is clause 7, yeah? On the issue of the appointment of the controller. I think it's flawed because it talks primarily of subsequent appointments, but the initial appointment is not very clear. So I think we should bring an amendment, or I hope to bring an amendment to do that. Then in clause 11, I think we should also provide an appeal process if the controller is dismissed and is not satisfied with that process. That is good governance practice, that there must be an appeal process. So for me, that is one of the things that I have an issue with. The other issue I have is in clause 16, where we are requiring counties to submit their food safety and feed safety to the controller. Mr. Speaker, I'm not too sure whether this is constitutional. We don't have a centralized system. We have a devolved system. And in a devolved system, you don't expect counties, governors, to be reporting to a controller. Is this controller more senior and more important than governors? So what if they don't actually then meet this standard? What then happens? So, Mr. Speaker, that is one of the things that I have a problem with. Mr. Speaker, again, I've said that in terms of the principle behind it, I want to agree with the member for Mandera West and Honorable Wundo, so I won't repeat what they've said. But I really have the same concerns, and that's why I'm telling you I'm very reluctant. I wish we'd have actually just amended the AFA Act to include the controller, and then, but if we are bringing a law as it is, then we should bring substantive provisions on traceability so that the controller has something substantive to do. Right now, if you actually look at the work of a controller, nothing. He's like a clerk. He's doing clerical work. And then this is a very important position of a person doing clerical work. So that is something that we need to look. So, Mr. Speaker, those are my comments. I have my reservations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Timothy Torotich, MP for Marakwet West. Yes, what is out of order, Honorable Joshua Kimino?
Chair, through the powers given by the Constitution of Kenya,
yes,
I just request you to order the members, because this is important, very important, which I need to contribute. Can we just talk for 4 minutes, Mr. Speaker? Please.
Yes, I want to confirm to you, Joshua, Honorable Joshua Kimilu, that your concern is right, but this is a bill which is not limited in time. It will continue up to tomorrow if it will be scheduled. So unless members want to conscript their own debates, let members have their time to deliberate on the issues being raised. Honorable Toroitich, proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very, very important bill, that is the Food and Feed Security Safety Control Coordination Bill. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this very, very important piece of legislation for the reason that we have a body, we have established an oversight body to check the competitive agencies, the authorities that have been established under other legislations. Honorable Speaker, the French philosopher Montesquieu, who is the father of separation of powers, talked of something called checks and balances. And Honorable Speaker, Montesquieu said that for any functional government to function well, there must be arms of government or agencies of government that to check the excesses of any other body. Honorable Speaker, we have had the Kenya Bureau of Standards for quite a long period of time. We've had the Pest Control Products Control Board for a quite long period of time. Honorable Speaker, the World Health Organization has banned 207 pesticides. But those pesticides are still in the shelves of this country. Madam Speaker, there was a research that was done recently, and it was found that majority of people infected by cancer or diagnosed out of cancer are farmers because they are direct consumers of these products. Madam Speaker, this House has on several occasions deliberated on the matter to do with the ban of those products. But Madam Speaker, because of corruption, because there is no body that checks that particular control board, because the ministries that are charged have slept on their jobs, there is no oversight body that checks on those particular competitive authorities. Honorable Speaker, I believe that the establishment of the office of the controller will be effective in checking the excesses, in checking those particular competitive authorities that have been established under different legislations. But we must be very, very careful on this, because there is a likelihood that there will be overlapping of duties, of functions. So the law must be very clear so that the controller cannot be able to stumble upon the other authorities established by law, so that oversight needs to be defined. To what extent is this, the regulator, be able to regulate these particular competitive authorities? So, Honorable Speaker, it must be very clear as to what extent that oversight shall be. Honorable Speaker, on the second issue, and on that limp I oppose, I reject the proposal that we legislate on behalf of county governments. Honorable Speaker, what this House should do is to provide a broad framework of issues, but we cannot legislate on behalf of county governments. Honorable Speaker, we have a constitution in this country that provides for the 47 county governments with their legislatures. They have county assemblies. The role of the county assembly is to legislate. Honorable Speaker, we cannot usurp the powers of the county assemblies through a legislation passed by this House. Honorable Speaker, we can only provide a broad framework, and then we leave the county assembly to provide on the nitty-gritties, so that we don't usurp the legislative powers, the legislative role, the legislative function of the county assemblies. Honorable Speaker, if we are to set up a legislative oversight body under this law, then let it be fully under the national government, so that we leave, we do away with the role of county governments on this matter. Honorable Speaker, we have had problems with legislations coming out from the county assemblies in this country. We have had duplication of legislations by the county governments. So the issue is this: if the county assembly is to legislate on this, then let us provide, as the National Assembly, a broad framework. Then the Senate, which is in charge of county governments, which oversees the county governments, let them come up with specificities on this particular legislation, so that the National Assembly is not seen as usurping the powers of the county assemblies. So, Honorable Speaker, because of time, I support the legislation, particularly on oversight. But what I'm saying is this House cannot and should not usurp the powers of county assemblies to be able to legislate further on the nitty-gritties of this particular broad framework that this House shall pass. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. I'm informed the Honorable Andrew Kume wants to address the House on this matter in 5 minutes. Honorable Andrew Kume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be brief. I know maybe some of my colleagues also want to put in their opinions on this. Now, the one thing I must say is that when it comes to food, we are talking about lives. Food is very, very important for us. And indeed, because of that importance, I thought it is very good I put in 1 or 2 points. Now, the standard of the safety we need for our food is essential. And looking at the principle involved in what the motion drafter had, I would say, yes, it is good, we can support this. But one thing that bothers me is that when we talk of standard, when we talk of safety, then we have a Bureau of Standard in place. So we need to know which one is Bureau of Standards responsibility and the controller we are talking about. What is he going to control that the other partner will not be controlling? Now, why I'm saying this is that recently we saw what happened. Some sugar was brought into the country, and the sugar was contaminated. It was not good for consumption. It was under the control of the Bureau of Standard. It disappeared in the air, and I assume it was consumed by Kenyans, endangering their lives. Now, the other issue that came up in Kenya sometime this year is GMO. There is a lot of debate on this one. It touches on standard. It touches on safety. Surely, Kenya has had a system of controlling itself against bringing in contaminated things or food that is questionable in standard. If we had this controller, perhaps it would do better than the standard, Bureau of Standard, so that we can control the importation of what is dangerous for our country. I support the idea of having a law that safeguards the safety of the food we eat, the drinks we take, the water we drink. Because, you know, when we talk of controller or even Bureau of Standard, surely people drink contaminated water in Kenya all the time. Many people have lost their lives because of that. What's happening? What's the bureau, the officers we have responsible for this kind of thing doing? I think we need a system that's very strong, supported by strong law, that can give us good health, and therefore help our lives and make us happy in whatever we consume within our borders. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Catherine Omanyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is very important to discuss this because I have always known that there is a food safety management system in place, but I think the occupants of that office, either they don't care or they are busy in making business, because we needed this in a million years, like we delayed, because just like my colleague has said recently, there was a product that was released to the market that was unsafe, that was needed to have been thrown out or burnt, not allowed for anyone to consume, but unfortunately it got lost. So I was wondering, if we have a proper food safety management in place, it means we have trained officers or a team that can trace if maybe it's misplaced, and maybe with the proper documentation, it will show where it was taken, from which corner to which corner, and make sure that it doesn't reach anybody. So this motion is supported by me fully, because we need to have proper monitoring, comprehensive monitoring system in place, and traceability of everything, every product that comes into Kenya or is sold in Kenya. And also, I think we are all sick to the back of the last teeth, because we talk about things and just leave them. There is nothing that we follow up to make sure that implementation is actually done. We just talk and talk and talk, and yet our people are suffering. Today, there are farmers who inject animals to get fat, or inject or give them food to make sure that these animals, especially chicken, gets fat and grows very fast, and within few days or 2 weeks, the chicken is big, ready for consumption. And those things that they use, they are not actually healthy for anyone. All of us, we are in trouble because this is the chicken that everybody is consuming today. And even, I think, pig farmers as well. They inject or feed the animals some funny food or some funny pellets to make sure that these pigs grow very fat and look like they're healthy. And yet, in our hustle and bustle of life, when we buy such pork or poultry, and we cook in a hurry, sometimes we just microwave everything, we are eating something that is going into the system, our body. And then after consuming it, we start having healthy issues. Inconsequential diseases start popping up. And most of the people who consume this cannot afford even hospital. So we need a regulation that protects our people, everybody in Kenya, whether rich or poor, that anything that we take, whether in open air markets or these markets that actually the people we used to call Bora Afya used to visit, that anything that is going to be consumed by Kenyans is properly inspected. Then also I was, my colleague talked about that, and because of time I just want to stop there, but actually this office needs to be in place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Karoli Omondi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I'll try and be very brief. Honorable Speaker, I think this bill is fundamentally flawed. And as a matter of fact, I would strongly urge it be withdrawn and the contents be seriously considered. Why am I saying so? Drawing from my experience as the person who drafted the National Environmental Management Authority Act, I think when you're dealing with different sectoral statutes, what you are concerned about is how do you effectively coordinate. And if you look at Section 3 of this bill, it talks about effectively coordinating the performance and the functions of the competent authorities. But these cut across various ministries and they cut across various statutes. There is nothing in this bill that will enable the so-called Comptroller of Food Safety to do that coordination effectively. There's absolutely nothing. And if you go to the first schedule, even competent authorities, ministries are included, number 1, 2, 3. Those are not competent authorities for purposes of coordinating the implementation of food safety. They should be the other institutions that you see there. The comptroller cannot coordinate as cabinet secretary. The comptroller cannot coordinate another body which is established by a statute of equal rank. So on that alone, it is fundamentally flawed. I did deal with this issue extensively when I wrote the MCA Act, and what I've seen here is something that will not work. But now let me go to the specifics. I would like to propose that the government side considers establishing what is called a National Food Safety Authority. That is what we need in the Republic of Kenya, instead of the Office of Food Safety Controller. And there are enough precedents across the world. And that particular National Food Safety Authority will have the following responsibilities: being the repository of all food and water standards. In other words, it will formulate and enforce all national food standards. And I'm glad the majority leaders just walked in. Secondly, that authority should be in charge of certification and registration of all competent specialists under those competent authorities.
Majority leader, what is out of order?
There's nothing out of order, Honorable Speaker. Maybe just as a point of information to the Honorable Karoli Omondi.
Honorable Karoli Omondi, you want to be informed?
No.
Your information rejected. Proceed, Honorable Omondi.
But thirdly, that particular authority should have power to intervene in case of national emergencies around food safety. And Honorable Speaker, it should also have what we call enforceability powers, which in terms of food safety should include enacting food safety regulations, creating labeling policy, food labeling policy, to provide adequate information on food, and thirdly, managing of what we call farm inputs, what my honorable sister from Suba North called traceability. And finally, because there's shortage of time, I'm just trying to put my thoughts on record so we can debate them later. We should separate, as the honorable member said, food regulation from feed regulation. They are completely different. even in terms of the qualifications of who needs to oversee them. And finally, Honorable Speaker, I think the proposed National Food Safety Authority should recognize traditional methods of food preservation as well as the modern ones. I've done it in a rush, simply because there's not much time, but as somebody with experience in creating an overarching institution in the environmental sector, I can assure the majority leader, this is not good work. It should be withdrawn and we start afresh and create a National Food Safety Authority. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Frederick Ikana.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to the motion. I want from the onset to put on record that I fully support the bill on food and feed safety coordination. Mr. Speaker, coming from a community where matters food are very emotional subjects and dear to our hearts, I want to support this motion in a way that we create this office and ensure that the food and the feeds that our population and our animals are consuming are very safe. Mr. Speaker, a few months ago, I lost 3 students and a staff at Mukumu Girls High School. As we speak, we have got no idea of exactly what transpired, but we know that for sure this would have been prevented if we had mechanism in place to ensure that the food and the feed that are being consumed by our students and by our population are safe for consumption. Mr. Speaker, we have been speaking a lot on matters food security, but now we have an opportunity to put in place an office that will ensure that we have mechanisms to monitor food right from production to processing and even to preservation and ultimately consumption. I seek to support the bill. Thank you.
What is out of order, Honorable Japhet Nkundi?
Nothing is out of order, Mr. Speaker, sir, but I think we have debated and deliberated on this bill, so we request that the mover to reply on this bill. I think that's all.
Honorable Japhet Nyakundi has stood at his place and asked that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Mover.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Maybe the member for Jomvu should be reminded that the House rises at 2:30 p.m., not 6:30 p.m., because sure he wants to say that Mombasa is far. But Honorable Speaker, let me thank all the members, very many members of close to 26 members or 27 members have contributed to this bill from the time we started. And I've keenly listened to some of the issues being raised, including those raised by the Honorable Millie Odhiambo on the handling of fish, even with the issues to do with Easy Coach. But that tells you the import of this bill and the importance of ensuring that there is proper handling of food and feed items. And I've also listened to the issues that they have been raised on the need to separate issues to do with food and feed. But animal feeds are also food to the livestock that also gives human beings food. And therefore, it's not really easy to have a very clear distinction between what relates to animal feeds and what will end up as being human food or food for human consumption. If they were there earlier, Honorable Speaker, as I move this bill, because I know they were all not there, I did indicate that you are feeding livestock, you are feeding dairy cattle that are producing milk that is ending up being consumed by human beings. The same thing with fish, because we're not just talking about fish that is being fished in lakes, because there are people who are rearing fish with the blue economy now thriving in this country. You go to Odhaya, you go to Kikuyu, you find people who are growing fish in fish ponds, and they are feeding these fish with a feed that is being manufactured. Therefore, there is an important point in ensuring that you handle food and feeds at the same point where you handle or you deal with matters to do with food for human consumption. Honorable Speaker, I've also listened to Honorable Milli's neighbor and member for Suba South, the Honorable Karoli Omondi, very diligent and polished legislator who is doing very well in his first term. And as much as the Honorable Millie Odhiambo is complaining about additional positions being created in the office of the food controller, the neighbor, Honorable Karoli Omondi, is asking us to now create an authority that will be heavier to the exchequer than an office that is being created within government. And this is in line with the Public Service Act. And the Public Service Commission can actually create such positions in the executive. And therefore, creating an authority will be much heavier to the exchequer. And indeed, I wanted to inform the Honorable Karoli when he refused me to inform him that it is government policy now not to create more semi-autonomous government agencies, or what you usually call sagas and state corporations, but rather to consolidate those sagas, those that are doing similar duties, to be able to be consolidated and to operate as one saga. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, just to inform the Honorable Karoli Omondi that indeed I've had the issues that he has raised in terms of additional responsibilities and functions that will be given to this office of the controller. You do not need an authority to perform those functions. The controller's office can still perform some of the functions that you have mentioned, as happens in other jurisdictions in the rest of the world. And you are at liberty, hopefully next week, should this bill go through second reading, to bring the necessary amendments to incorporate additional functions that you may want to see being done by the Office of the Controller. I really want to persuade him to join those of us who support this bill, to support it with the necessary amendments to increase the functions that he's speaking to. And I do agree to some of the functions he was agreeing to could be additional functions that would enrich that Office of the Controller without having to create an additional authority that we will need the people of Suba to cough a little bit more of their taxes to operationalize that authority as a semi-autonomous government entity. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply.
Honorable Majority Leader, thank you very much. I think we will end the debate at that. The question will be put for the convenience of the House when this matter will be listed in the order paper the next time by the people who prepare the House business. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, the time being 7:04 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, 16th August 2023 at 9:30 a.m.
Honorable members, order. I would like to call upon Senator Shakila Abdallah to move the motion. What's your point of order, Senator Sifuna?
Mr. Speaker, it would have been nice if members were supplied with the copies of that report so that when the mover is going through accessible copies, I can confirm with my neighbor, Senator Crystal Asige, that she does not have an accessible copy of the report. Thank
Senator
you,
Sifuna, I'm informed that all the iPads are actually with the report. However, I also directed that the clerk's desk can avail for those who are not digitally able to access from the iPad the report. Senator Wambua, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, mine is just a matter of procedure. Mr. Speaker, you know, it is these small things that really eat from the dignity of this House. I've seen Senator Cherargei casually just cross over. I even warned him, and he proceeded to cross to the other side. Mr. Speaker, you know, we must give dignity to this House, honestly.
Senator Cherargei, remember yesterday a similar incident happened, and the chair will not hesitate to apply the rules as are required. You're out of order, kindly comply, do what is procedurally required of you as a ranking member of this House. You cannot ignore the fact that there are rules that are to be followed. Proceed. Proceed. Senator Cherargei. Senator Shakila, take the floor and move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the Senate adopts the report of the Committee, Powers and Privilege on an inquiry on its own motion into conduct of Senator Gloria Orobwa, MP, and to establish of the conduct, if the conduct constituted breach of parliamentary privilege, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 9th August 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Committee of Powers and Privilege is established under Section 15(1) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act number 29 of 2017. Section 15(4) of the Act provides for the function of the committee as follows. The functions of the Committee of Power and Privilege shall be to inquire under the conduct of a member whose conduct is alleged to constitute breach of privilege in terms of Section 16. B, perform such other functions as may be specified in this Act. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, Section 15(5) of the Act empowers the Committee of Powers and Privilege to inquire either by its own motion or as a result of a complaint made by any person into the conduct of a member whom conduct is alleged to constitute a breach of privilege in terms of Section 16. Mr. Speaker, the members are as follows. Chairperson, Speaker Kingi, Senator Alexander, point of order.
What is your point of order, Senator Fatuma Adulo?
Chair, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm requesting if the students who are here can be recognized so that we can discuss this matter comfortably. Thank you. Recognize and release them, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the members are on the list, and I will go through the charges, Mr. Speaker, briefly. Yeah. Charge number 1, Mr. Speaker, is the conduct constituted breach of privilege under Section 16E and Paragraph 7A of the 4th Schedule in the Parliamentary Power and Privilege Act 2017. Count 1, allegation of suits of sexual favor. Mr. Speaker, that the senator of diverse dates made an unsubstantiated allegations that there were instances of pursuant of sexual favors in Parliament by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp groups.
Senator.
Mr. Speaker.
Senator Shakila, the chair is on the mic. What is your point of order, Senator Wamatinga?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think it's prudent that you rule on what Senator Duaro has asked. And looking up there, Mr. Speaker, I see that there are some small school children.
You've made your point. You've made your point. We have made arrangements. We are going to recognize them in a moment. We're getting the communication. And
Mr. Speaker, some of the content of these documents, I think they are sensitive, and we should watch on who is in the house when you're talking about them. Thank you.
Very well, very well. That's noted. The communication is coming. We shall, in a moment, deal. Senator Tumo, you are not yet. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Chair. I think apart from releasing the students now here, you should direct Mr. Speaker that until this motion is finalized, no more students should be allowed to the public gallery. I think you should give that direction.
Noted. Senator Karungo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a public house. The debate is live. Even those kids at home are watching. I don't see any problem whatsoever for us discussing this issue. They are here to learn so that they can see what we go through or what we say in this house. So, Mr. Speaker, unless now you have to order we shut even online, so that it becomes a kamukunji or becomes a, you know. So this is not a personal issue. It is a matter of public concern. It is a report of a committee. So I don't see the reason why we should bar anybody from accessing this debate.
Senator Karungu, the chair had ruled, and indeed the people who are in the gallery have already been discharged, and we are going to proceed with the motion. Senator Shagila, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, count 2, allegations of favorism and discrimination, that the Senate in diverse states made unsubstantiated allegations that there was discrimination in Parliament by posting various messages at the Senate business WhatsApp groups, and made allegations during a media briefing held in the Media Center, main Parliament building. Mr. Speaker, count 3, allegations of corruption, that the Senate in diverse dates made unsubstantiated allegations that there were cases of corruption in Parliament by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp group. Count 4, allegations of back kicks and legislative agenda, that the Senate on diverse dates made unsubstantiated allegations that there were requests for kickbacks for legislative agenda in Parliament by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp groups. Charge 2, conduct constituting breach of privilege under paragraph 8 of the 4th schedule to the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017 on the Code of Conduct for Members of Parliament. Count 1, allegations disrespecting fellow senators, that the senator on diverse dates published information that was disrespectful towards the fellow senators in the Senate business WhatsApp group. Count 2, allegations of inputting improper motive on fellow senators, that the senator on diverse dates imputed improper motive on other senators by posting various messages on the Senate business WhatsApp groups. All these reports are in the reports. All these postings are in the reports. The committee, noting the gravity of the charges and conduct of the Senator, Gloria Oroba, MP findings of the committee, and having reviewed the sanctions provided for the Section 17(3) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, as well as the practice in other jurisdictions, finds the Senator Oroba MP conduct was in breach of parliamentary privilege and recommend that, number 1, pursuant to Section 17(3)(g) of Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, the Senator be suspended from the House of the remainder of the second session for the 13th Parliament. Number 2, pursuant to Section 17(3)(d) of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, restrictions of access to the precincts of Parliament of defined in Section 3 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, and Standing Order 2 of the Senate Standing Orders, and withholding the use of enjoyment of any unspecified facilities provided to members by Parliament to be applied to the Senator for the remaining of the second session of the 13th Parliament. Admitted and Privilege Act 2017 in the manner stated in the report. Mr. Speaker, sir, on behalf of the committee, I take this opportunity to thank the members of the committee for their immense contribution to the inquiry that culminated to the report. The committee wishes to also thank the Secretariat of the Senate for the necessary support. On behalf of the Committee for Powers and Privilege, I have the honor and pleasure to present the report of the Committee of Powers and Privilege of its inquiry on its own motion into conduct of Senator Gloria Oroba, MP, and to establish if the conduct constituted breach of Parliament privilege in the Senate. I thank you, and I request Mr. Wamatinga Wahome, MP, to second. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wamatinga, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second this motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, I sat in the committee that discussed the conduct of Senator Gloria Oroba. What I must say, Mr. Speaker, sir, regardless, we must know that we are all colleagues in this place. We have a collective responsibility to take care of the reputation of this House. We have a collective responsibility to take care of the reputation of members, and we also have a collective and moral obligation to ensure that the standard of this House, as seen by the public out there, does not become affected in whichever way. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's my observation, my humble submission, that we all have other channels of dealing with whatever grievances we might have without resorting into hitting under the berry. And I therefore would want to urge my colleagues for the remaining 4 years that will be in this House, let's embrace collegiality, let's embrace sobriety, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we portray an important and very, 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 very moral obligation of us all to portray this House as a respectable House. Mr. Speaker, sir, we must never forget that people out there do look at us as the pace setters, as role models, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, when there are issues that we must discuss, be it in the social media or even in the floor of the House, let's never forget that out there, people are watching and looking at us and debating what we are doing, and therefore, we must ensure that we do not in any way responsibility the privileges or even the dignity that's associated with being honorable members. Mr. Speaker, sir, being a honorable member has quite a lot of responsibility. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we have in public gallery, people, students who come here so that they can learn, let them learn from the best. I do, Mr. Speaker, sir, believe that there are channels that we are able to weigh our grievances, that we can be able, yes, to differ on opinion, to differ on principles, but basically to hold each other and treat each other with a lot of decorum. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it is important for this House to commit itself to upholding the traditions, the dignity, and most importantly, the image that it is seen by those people out there. Mr. Speaker, sir, my humble submission is the collective responsibility we have when we walk inside that door makes us and must bind us to ensure that sobriety and most importantly, dignity is upheld. Mr. Speaker, sir, I second.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that the Senate adopts the report of the Committee of Powers and Privileges on the inquiry on its own motion into the conduct of Senator Gloria Orwoba, MP, and to establish if the conduct constituted breach of parliamentary privilege laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 9th August 2020.